Imagine a hospital so haunted. Officials actually boarded it up and posted guards outside, not to protect the building, but to protect you from what's inside. People who snuck in swore they heard patients screaming from empty hallways. Security footage caught wheelchairs moving on their own. And one man who went in never came back out. This isn't just an urban legend. This hospital exists. And tonight, you'll hear exactly what happened when a small group ignored every warning sign and broke inside. What they found wasn't just ghosts, but something far more terrifying. Something that explains why no one is allowed near it anymore. Stay with me, because the ending to this story is one you'll never forget. The hospital had been closed since the late 1980s. On the surface, it looked like just another abandoned building. Broken windows, ivy crawling up the walls, the faded hospital sign barely visible. Locals called it St. Augustine's. But if you asked anyone in the nearby town about it, their faces would change. They'd warn you off instantly. Some claimed a fire killed dozens of patients. Others whispered about unethical experiments carried out in the basement. And a few swore that the staff didn't leave after it shut down. At least, not in the way you'd expect. 3 friends, Ethan, Marcus, and Riley, had been filming urban exploration videos for their small YouTube channel. They'd already been in abandoned schools, factories, and even a morgue. But when they heard about St. Augustine's, they knew this was the big one. The problem. The building was chained off, with "Do not enter" signs plastered everywhere. Security supposedly patrolled once or twice a night. That made it irresistible. On a rainy Friday evening, they parked their car 2 blocks away and slipped through a gap in the fence. The air smelled of mold and rust. As they climbed through a broken side door, Riley whispered, "You hear that?" At first, it was just the wind. But then Ethan heard it too, like faint footsteps above them, even though the entire second floor had collapsed years ago. "Probably water dripping," Marcus muttered, but his voice was unsteady. Inside, the hospital was a graveyard of medical equipment. Rusted gurneys lined the hallways. Papers were scattered across the floor, soaked through with years of rain. And in one room, a wheelchair sat perfectly upright in the middle of the hall, facing them as though someone had left it there just moments before. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Their flashlights flickered. They tried to laugh it off, but every sound, every distant creak, every gust of air, seemed amplified. Then they found the basement doors. Heavy steel, padlocked shut from the outside. Someone had clearly wanted to keep something in, not out. That's when Riley said the words that changed everything. "We have to see what's down there. That's where the real story is." Marcus hesitated, but Ethan grabbed a crowbar from his backpack. They pried the lock loose, and the door groaned open like it hadn't moved in decades. The staircase leading down was steep, concrete walls sweating moisture. The smell hit them first, rotting wood, mildew, and something metallic like dried blood. At the bottom, the basement stretched into darkness. Their flashlights caught glimpses of strange things: hospital beds with restraints, jars of preserved organs, and a surgical chair bolted to the floor, its leather straps stiff with age. "Dude, this wasn't a regular hospital," Ethan whispered. As they filmed, Riley's camera caught something behind them, a shadow darting across the wall. They spun around, but no one was there. Then, faintly, they heard it. A woman's voice, humming, soft, eerie, like a lullaby echoing through the halls. Marcus wanted to leave. He said the place wasn't safe, that it felt wrong, but the others pushed forward, following the sound deeper into the basement. They reached a heavy door marked "Psychiatric Ward, Restricted Access." It had been smashed open long ago. Inside, the walls were lined with padded cells, carvings etched into the padding, scratches that spelled words. Ethan ran his light across them. "Help me. Still here. Don't let them in." Suddenly, the humming stopped. Silence pressed in on them like a weight. Then came the slam of a cell door closing by itself at the far end of the hall. They rushed toward it, but when they reached the cell, the door was wide open again. On the floor was a patient wristband, cracked and yellowed with age. The name on it read, Ethan Clark. Ethan froze. "That's my name." Before anyone could react, the lights flickered. For just a second, they weren't alone. Figures stood in the hall, dozens of them, pale, skeletal patients in torn gowns, all staring silently. When the light steadied, they were gone. But something else had changed. The way back to the stairs was gone. Where the hallway once was, there was only solid concrete. Panic set in. They were trapped. The air grew heavier, harder to breathe. Then the humming returned, this time louder, closer. A figure stepped out of the shadows. A woman in a nurse's uniform, her face blurred and shifting, as if reality itself couldn't decide what she looked like. She spoke in a voice that echoed through the walls. "You shouldn't be here. They never left." She pointed at Ethan. "He belongs to us." Suddenly, hands erupted from the padded walls, grey, skeletal hands clawing at them. Marcus screamed as one wrapped around his wrist. Riley swung his flashlight wildly, smashing it against the wall until the hands retracted. But Ethan just stood there, frozen. The nurse reached for him, and for a split second, Riley saw Ethan's face change. His eyes black, his mouth twisted into a grin that wasn't his own. "No," Ethan whispered. "I've been here before." The walls pulsed, the entire ward shaking as if alive. Doors slammed open and shut. Gurneys rolled down hallways by themselves, and the sound of hundreds of voices filled the air, crying, screaming, begging. Marcus grabbed Ethan, pulling him toward the exit, but Ethan resisted. "Don't you get it? They want me. They've always wanted me. I think I was one of them." And then, before their eyes, Ethan vanished. 1 second he was there, the next, gone. Only the wristband remained, lying on the floor. The nurse smiled. 1 returned. 2 to go. Riley and Marcus ran, blindly, through twisting hallways that didn't make sense anymore. Rooms led into other rooms. Staircases went nowhere. No matter which way they turned, they ended up back in the psychiatric ward. Finally, Marcus smashed through a rotten wooden wall with a crowbar, revealing an old maintenance shaft. They crawled through it, the sounds of footsteps following close behind. The air grew colder with every inch, and just as Riley thought they'd never get out, they saw moonlight. They tumbled onto the wet grass outside, gasping for air. The hospital loomed behind them, silent and still. Ethan was gone. When they went to the police, no one believed them. The officers just shook their heads. "Another one lost," one muttered. "That place should have been demolished years ago. Riley never uploaded the footage." He swore something was wrong with it. The files kept corrupting, glitching, showing images that weren't there. Sometimes, when he played it back, he'd hear Ethan's voice whispering, "Still here." Marcus moved away and never spoke of it again. Riley, though, still dreams of that nurse. Sometimes he wakes up in the night and swears he hears humming outside his door. And the hospital? It's still standing. Guards still patrol it. Because whatever is inside isn't done yet. So, here's the question. Would you ever step foot inside St. Augustine's Hospital if you had the chance? Or would you stay far away, knowing what might be waiting inside? Let me know what you'd do in the comments below. I'll be reading every single one. And if you thought this story was terrifying, you're going to want to stick around for what's coming next. Because this is just the beginning. Make sure you hit that like button if your heart was racing even once during this story, and subscribe with the bell on, so you never miss another night of horror. But remember, next time you pass an old abandoned hospital and you feel tempted to look inside, think about Ethan. He thought it was just another adventure, and now he's part of the hospital forever. There's a house so infamous, even veteran paranormal investigators refuse to step inside. They call it the Demon House. People who lived there claimed to be scratched, dragged, even possessed. Police officers reported seeing figures vanish in front of them, and one priest said it was the only place that ever made him doubt his faith. But what you don't know is this: a team of investigators ignored every warning and went in anyway. They thought they were prepared. Cameras, EVP recorders, holy water, the works. What happened next? None of them walked out the same, and one of them never walked out at all. Tonight, I'll tell you exactly what they saw, and why the house was sealed shut forever. The house stood in a quiet suburban neighborhood, outwardly normal. A two-story home with peeling paint, overgrown grass, and boarded-up windows. Locals whispered that it was cursed. The last family who lived there had called 911 dozens of times. Their kids claimed to see shadow people. Their mother reported being levitated from her bed. Even police who responded said they saw wet footprints appear on the floor, leading upstairs, even though no one was there. After multiple exorcisms failed, the family fled, leaving everything behind. The property was abandoned, condemned, and eventually walled off with no trespassing signs. But to paranormal investigators, that only made it irresistible. The team, 4 friends named Dana, Luis, Erica, and Paul, ran a small channel documenting hauntings. They'd debunked plenty of fake haunted houses before. Dana, the leader, was skeptical but curious. Luis was the tech guy, loaded with EMF meters and infrared cameras. Erica was the sensitive one, the kind who swore she could feel spirits. And Paul, the skeptic, kept everyone grounded. They weren't amateurs. They'd been to asylums, prisons, even graveyards. But when Dana announced they were going into the demon house, even Paul hesitated. The night they arrived, the street was eerily quiet. No cars parked nearby, no neighbors outside. The house seemed to radiate emptiness. As Luis set up cameras outside, Erica froze. "It doesn't want us here," she whispered. Dana laughed it off. "That's exactly why we're going in." Inside, the air was stifling, heavy. Dust floated through their flashlight beams. Furniture sat exactly as the family left it. Kids' toys scattered on the floor, plates still on the table. But everything smelled of decay. Luis set down an EVP recorder. Static filled the silence. Then, clear as day, a voice whispered through, "Go back." They hadn't even unpacked their gear yet. They moved deeper into the house, setting up cameras in each room. The EMF meter spiked immediately, higher than they'd ever seen. Luis tapped it, thinking it was broken. It wasn't. In the living room, Erica suddenly gasped. "Something's here, watching us." Paul rolled his eyes. "Yeah, your imagination." But then, on camera, a shadow darted across the hallway. Tall, thin, moving unnaturally fast. Paul stopped laughing. They decided to split up. Luis and Dana upstairs, Erica and Paul in the basement. That's when things escalated. Downstairs, Erica started feeling sick. The basement was damp, filled with old boxes and broken furniture. On the far wall, carved into the concrete, were symbols none of them recognized: circles, crosses, and something that looked disturbingly like a goat's head. Paul tried to film it, but his camera shut off by itself. When he turned it back on, the battery had drained from 90% to 0 in seconds. Meanwhile, upstairs, Dana and Luis were in what had been the children's room. Tiny handprints covered the closet door. Luis placed an EMF reader near it. It spiked violently. Dana reached for the handle, but before she could open it, the closet door rattled violently, as if something inside wanted out. Then, without warning, it flew open. Nothing was inside. They regrouped in the kitchen, shaken. That's when Luis noticed something strange. On his infrared camera, the temperature in the room dropped to below freezing. Their breaths became visible, and in the middle of the frame, standing between them, was a figure, tall, blacker than shadow, with glowing white eyes. Erica screamed, but when Dana spun around, nothing was there. Then Luis looked down at his arm. 3 deep scratches had appeared out of nowhere, bleeding. "This isn't a haunting," Erica said, trembling. "It's something worse." The team wanted to leave, but the house wouldn't let them. The front door, which had opened easily before, was now jammed shut. Every window was sealed, unbreakable. The air grew suffocating. The walls seemed to pulse, as if the house itself was alive. That's when the laughter started. A deep, guttural sound, echoing from every corner. The house vibrated with it. Suddenly, Luis collapsed. His body contorted, twisting unnaturally. His eyes rolled back, and a voice not his own bellowed, "You invited us." Dana and Erica tried to hold him down, but his strength was inhuman. He thrashed violently, screaming in a guttural tone that made no sense, like a language not meant for human mouths. Paul grabbed holy water from their kit and splashed it across Luis's chest. Instantly, his body convulsed, smoke rising from his skin as if it burned. He screamed, not Luis's scream, but something else's. Then, silence. For a moment, they thought it worked. But Luis sat up slowly, his face calm, his eyes now solid black. "It's too late," he whispered. "He's ours." The kitchen lights exploded. Every bulb shattered, plunging them into darkness. Doors slammed throughout the house. On the recorder, voices screamed all at once. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Paul tried to drag Erica toward the basement door, thinking maybe there was another exit. But the door swung shut, trapping Dana inside the kitchen with Luis. She pointed the camera at him, and for a brief moment the lens showed his true face, a twisted, monstrous thing with horns, teeth stretching too wide, and eyes that burned like fire. Then the feed cut out. When Paul and Erica finally broke free through the basement storm doors, the house went still, silent, as if nothing had ever happened. They ran into the street, gasping for air, never daring to look back. Dana and Luis never came out. The next day, police entered the house. They found nothing. No Dana, no Luis, no signs of struggle. Just the gear they'd left behind. Erica quit investigating altogether, moving across the country. Paul tried to continue alone, but every time he filmed, strange things happened. His audio corrupted, voices whispered in the background, and sometimes, just for a split second, Luis's face would appear in the footage. The house itself was sealed off by the city. Officials said it was too dangerous to demolish, claiming the foundation was unstable. But locals knew the truth. The house wasn't just haunted. It was hungry, and it had taken 2 more souls. To this day, people still report seeing lights flicker in the windows at night. Some say they hear voices calling out for help. Others swear they see a figure, tall, black-eyed, watching from the upstairs window. And the legend of the demon house only grows darker with each passing year. So, what do you think? Would you ever set foot inside the demon house if you had the chance? Or would you stay far, far away, knowing what happened to Dana and Luis? Tell me in the comments. What would you do if a door slammed shut behind you in a place like that? If this story made your heart race, smash that like button so I know you want more terrifying investigations like this one. And don't forget to subscribe with the bell on, because the next story might just be even darker. And remember, sometimes haunted houses aren't haunted at all. Sometimes there's something much worse, and once you step inside, you may never step back out. Everyone thinks a Ouija board is just a game. You ask a few questions, the planchette moves, and you laugh it off. But what if it isn't a game? What if, instead of your friends moving the planchette, something else is? Over the years, thousands have claimed to experience horrifying things after using Ouija boards. Scratches on their skin, objects flying across rooms, even voices calling their names when no one else was there. Tonight, I'll share 3 stories that prove how dangerous these boards can be. Stories where simple questions opened doors that should have stayed shut. And the final story, it's one that investigators still can't explain to this day. Stay with me, because after this, you might never look at a Ouija board the same way again. The first story comes from 2 sisters, Julia and Emily. They were bored one summer night and found an old Ouija board in their grandmother's attic. Thinking it would be funny, they lit a candle and placed their fingers on the planchette. At first, it was silly. They asked who Julia would marry, what Emily's future job would be. The board spelled nonsense, and they laughed. Then Emily asked, "Is anyone here with us?" The planchette slid to yes. Julia accused Emily of moving it. Emily swore she didn't. They tried again. "What's your name?" The board spelled N-O-N-E. Confused, Julia asked, "Where are you from?" Slowly, the letters spelled H-E-L-L. The candle flickered violently. Emily wanted to stop, but Julia insisted they finish the session properly, by saying goodbye. Only when they moved the planchette to goodbye did the room calm. But that night, Emily woke to the sound of scratching at her door. When she opened it, no one was there, just 3 long scratches carved deep into the wood. The next morning, Julia's arm had the same 3 marks. They burned the Ouija board after that, but Emily swears she still hears scratching on her bedroom door sometimes. That was just the beginning. The second story happened to a group of college friends. 4 of them, Ryan, Nicole, Jared, and Mia, gathered in their dorm one rainy night with a Ouija board. They wanted to record it for fun. Ryan set up his phone to film. When they asked if anyone was there, the board answered, "Yes." "Who are you?" Jared asked. "DEAD." They laughed nervously. Nicole, trying to push it further, asked, "How did you die?" The board spelled MURD. The candle blew out. They thought maybe Jared was playing a trick. But when Ryan replayed the video, something chilling appeared. Behind them, just for a second, was a shadow figure standing in the corner of the room. Terrified, they tried to end the session. But the planchette refused to move to goodbye. It stayed stuck in the middle of the board. Suddenly, the dorm lights exploded, showering glass across the room. Everyone screamed. That night, Nicole claimed she woke up to find a man standing over her bed. When she turned on the light, no one was there, but her blanket had been pulled off completely, lying folded neatly on the floor. By the next week, all 4 dropped out of school. They never spoke about what happened again. Ryan deleted the footage, but others say they've seen fragments of it posted online. showing the shadow behind them moving closer. The final story is the most disturbing, and the one investigators still can't explain. A paranormal team in Ohio wanted to debunk Ouija boards once and for all. They set up cameras in an abandoned farmhouse and began their session. At first, nothing happened. They asked questions, but the planchette didn't move. Hours passed. Finally, one of them asked, "If anyone's here, give us a sign." The board spelled WATNG. Suddenly, every camera shut off at the same time. The farmhouse plunged into silence. When the cameras came back online, the investigators were gone. All that was left was the Ouija board, the planchette resting on one word, "Ernie." Police were called, and a full search was launched. But the investigators were never found. Their gear remained perfectly intact. The strangest part, the video footage was reviewed by digital experts. There were no cuts, no tampering. One moment the team was sitting there, the next, they simply weren't. The farmhouse has since been demolished. But some say if you play a Ouija board anywhere near that property, the same message still comes through. Watching. What do these stories mean? Are Ouija boards really doors to the other side, or just coincidences gone too far? Skeptics argue it's just the ideomotor effect, your muscles moving the planchette without you realizing. But explain the scratches, the shadows caught on camera, the voices recorded when no one was speaking, and the disappearance of those investigators? To this day, no logical explanation has ever been found. Their families still search for answers. One thing is certain, for every funny story of a Ouija board, there are hundreds that end with terror, regret, and unanswered questions. The truth is, no one really knows what these boards connect to. Spirits? Demons? Something else entirely? But the stories are always the same. Once the door is open, it doesn't always close. And sometimes, what comes through doesn't leave. So the next time someone brings out a Ouija board at a party and says, "It's just a game," remember Julia's scratches, Nicole's shadow figure, and the team that vanished without a trace. So, now I have to ask you, would you ever use a Ouija board? Or do you believe it's far too dangerous to even touch one? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know how many of you think these stories are just superstition, and how many believe they're real warnings. And if this story left you chilled, make sure to like this video so I know you want more. Subscribe with notifications on, because the next story might just change the way you see the world forever. And remember, sometimes the scariest monsters don't come from horror movies. Sometimes they're waiting for you to place your fingers on a board and say one word, "Hello." The Whitmore Asylum, the dark history of abandoned asylums. In the fall of 2019, urban explorer Marcus Chen received an anonymous email that would change his life forever. The message contained only GPS coordinates and a single line: "They're still waiting in the basement." Marcus had been documenting abandoned buildings across the Pacific Northwest for his moderately successful YouTube channel, but nothing had prepared him for what he'd find at the Whitmore Asylum. The facility sat 40 miles outside Portland, Oregon, hidden behind a dense forest of Douglas firs. Built in 1923, Whitmore had been a state-of-the-art psychiatric hospital, designed by renowned architect Edmund Hartley. The building featured the popular Kirkbride plan design: long, sprawling wings meant to provide maximum light and air circulation for patients. By all accounts, it was supposed to be a place of healing. Marcus arrived on a grey October morning, the kind where fog clings to everything like wet cotton. He'd brought his usual equipment: 2 cameras, extra batteries, flashlights, and his friend Sarah, who handled the audio recording. They'd worked together for 3 years, exploring over 50 abandoned locations. Sarah was practical, skeptical of ghost stories, which made her the perfect balance to Marcus's enthusiasm. The main building loomed ahead, its red brick facade stained with decades of rain and moss. Most windows were broken, their frames hanging like crooked teeth. The front entrance stood open, the doors long since torn from their hinges by scavengers or vandals. "You sure about this one?" Sarah asked, adjusting her backpack. "This place gives me a weird feeling." Marcus checked his camera settings. "When do they not give you a weird feeling? That's literally why we're here." They stepped inside. The main hall was exactly what they expected. Peeling paint, water damage, scattered debris. Graffiti covered most walls, the usual teenage declarations of love and rebellion. Sunlight filtered through broken windows, creating dusty beams that made everything look surreal and dreamlike. They spent 2 hours documenting the upper floors. Patient rooms stood empty, their doors removed long ago. In one wing, they found the old hydrotherapy room, its porcelain tubs cracked and filled with stagnant water. Marcus explained to his camera how these treatments, once considered progressive, often amounted to torture. Patients submerged in ice water for hours or confined in scalding baths until their skin burned. But it was the administrative office that provided the first real clue. Sarah found the filing cabinet in what must have been the director's office. Most drawers were empty, ransacked years ago, but the bottom drawer was jammed. Marcus helped her pry it open with a crowbar. Inside, they found a leather-bound journal, surprisingly well preserved, wrapped in waterproof cloth. The journal belonged to Dr. Catherine Whitmore, the asylum's director from 1958 to 1962. Marcus flipped through the pages, reading entries aloud for the camera. The early entries were mundane: patient admissions, treatment protocols, staff meetings. But as they progressed into 1961, the tone shifted dramatically. March 15th, 1961, Marcus read. "The new treatment protocol shows promise. Subjects in group A demonstrate significant behavioral modification after only 3 sessions. However, Dr. Morrison has expressed concerns about the ethical implications. I've reassured him that our methods, while unconventional, will revolutionize psychiatric care." Sarah leaned over his shoulder. "What treatment protocol?" Marcus continued reading, his voice growing quieter. The entries became increasingly disturbing. Dr. Whitmore described experiments involving sensory deprivation, experimental drugs, and something she called neural restructuring, a procedure that seemed to involve crude forms of psychosurgery performed in the asylum's basement. The final entry was dated November 3rd, 1962, just 2 weeks before the asylum was abruptly shut down by state authorities. "They know," Dr. Whitmore had written in shaky handwriting. "The inspectors are coming tomorrow. Morrison has betrayed us to the board. I've sealed the basement laboratory. The subjects must not be found. What we've created, what they've become, no one would understand. The work must continue, even if I cannot be here to see it through. I've left instructions with the night staff. They know what must be done." Marcus and Sarah stood in silence, the weight of what they'd read settling over them. The anonymous email suddenly made terrible sense. "They're still waiting in the basement. We need to call someone," Sarah said. "If there's any truth to this, there could be remains down there. This is a crime scene." "We will," Marcus promised. "But we need to document it first. If we call the cops now, they'll kick us out. This could be the most important urban exploration find in years." Sarah didn't look convinced, but she followed him through the maze of corridors toward the basement access. They found the stairwell behind a door marked "Maintenance, Authorized Personnel Only." The door was newer than the others, reinforced steel with a heavy padlock that had been recently cut through. "Someone's been here before us," Sarah whispered. The stairs descended into absolute darkness. Their flashlights seemed to get swallowed by the black, revealing only a few feet ahead at a time. The temperature dropped with each step, and a smell began to rise up to meet them. Not the decay they expected, but something chemical, antiseptic, wrong. The basement stretched out in a series of connected rooms. The first was clearly a laboratory. Steel tables, glass-fronted cabinets still containing bottles of amber liquid, equipment that looked like it belonged in a nightmare rather than a medical facility. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, but otherwise remarkably preserved, as if the basement had been hermetically sealed. It was in the third room that they found the cells. 6 of them, each about 8 feet by 8 feet, lined one wall. The doors were solid steel with small viewing slots. 5 stood open. 1 was sealed shut, secured by a complex locking mechanism that looked far too modern for a building abandoned in 1962. Marcus approached the sealed cell slowly, his camera trained on the door. Sarah hung back, every instinct screaming at her to leave. "Marcus, don't," she said, but he was already looking through the viewing slot. He jerked back immediately, his face draining of color. "Oh God! Oh Jesus Christ! What did you see?" Marcus couldn't speak. He just pointed at the slot. Sarah, against her better judgment, looked. Inside the cell was a person, or what had once been a person. The figure sat in the corner, motionless. It was impossible to tell if it had been male or female. The body was emaciated, skin pulled tight over bones, but the truly horrifying part was the head. The skull had been opened and crudely resealed with metal plates held together by bolts. Wires protruded from various points, connecting to a device attached to the wall, some kind of battery or power supply that still showed a faint green indicator light. The figure's eyes were open, staring at nothing, or staring at everything. It was impossible to tell if the person was alive or dead, but something about the way the chest moved, so slowly it was almost imperceptible, suggested a horrible answer. Sarah stumbled backward, fighting the urge to vomit. "We need to leave. Right now." But Marcus was already on his phone, trying to get a signal. "No bars. We're too deep. We need to." The lights came on. Not the harsh fluorescent lights they expected, but a soft, amber glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. And with the lights came a sound, a low humming that seemed to vibrate in their bones. "Power's still on," Marcus whispered. "After 60 years, there's still power down here." The viewing slot on the sealed cell slid shut on its own. Then, from somewhere deeper in the basement, they heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving toward them. They ran. The basement became a maze of corridors that Sarah didn't remember passing through. Every turn looked the same. Every hallway stretched into darkness despite the amber lights. The footsteps behind them never hurried, never stopped, just continued their steady, inevitable approach. They found another stairwell, or maybe the same one, they couldn't tell, and burst through the door into the ground floor. Sunlight had never looked so beautiful. They didn't stop running until they reached Marcus's car, didn't speak until they were 5 miles down the road. Marcus wanted to go to the police immediately. Sarah convinced him to wait until they reviewed the footage, to make sure they had solid evidence. They spent that evening at Marcus's apartment, downloading the camera files. That's when they discovered the first impossibility. The footage from the basement showed everything: the laboratory, the cells, the sealed door. But when Marcus played back what he'd recorded through the viewing slot, the cell appeared empty. Just bare concrete walls and floor. No figure. No surgical horror. Nothing. "That's not possible," Marcus said, rewinding and playing it again. "We both saw it. You looked through the slot." You saw the same thing I did. Sarah felt cold. Maybe the camera angle was wrong. Maybe it was too dark. They checked Sarah's audio recording next. The entire basement sequence was there. Their footsteps, their breathing, their conversation. But underneath it all was something else. Something they hadn't heard in real time. Voices. Dozens of them, whispering in overlapping layers. Too quiet to make out individual words, but clearly there. And at the very end, just before they reached the stairs, one voice came through clearly. It was a woman's voice, calm and clinical. Subjects show remarkable resilience. Neural restructuring appears permanent. The consciousness remains, but the will to resist has been successfully eliminated. They will wait as long as necessary. It was Dr. Whitmore's voice. Marcus spent the next week trying to find more information about the asylum. Public records showed it had been shut down in November 1962, following an inspection that revealed unsanitary conditions and questionable treatment methods. Dr. Catherine Whitmore had disappeared the day before the closure. She was never found. The investigation was quietly dropped after a few months. He found newspaper archives from the time. The Portland Tribune had run a small article about the closure, but it mentioned something the official records didn't. 6 patients were unaccounted for. The asylum's records showed them as transferred to other facilities, but those facilities had no record of receiving them. The night staff, who were supposed to have witnessed the transfers, they'd all quit the same day the asylum closed, and none could be located for questioning. Marcus couldn't let it go. 3 weeks after their first visit, he returned to Whitmore Asylum. This time he went alone. Sarah had refused to come, threatened to end their partnership if he went back. He went anyway. He brought better equipment this time: thermal imaging camera, EMF detector, professional recording gear. He also brought bolt cutters. He needed to open that cell. The asylum looked different in the afternoon light. Less menacing, almost sad. Just an old building falling apart, reclaimed by nature. Marcus almost convinced himself that what they'd experienced had been some kind of shared hallucination, stress and suggestion combining to create something that wasn't real. The basement entrance was sealed. Someone had installed a new door, heavy steel with a serious lock. But the lock was on the outside. Whatever was down there, someone wanted to keep it contained. Marcus found another way in through a coal chute that led to a storage area adjacent to the basement proper. It took an hour of crawling through darkness and debris, but he made it. The laboratory was as they'd left it, but now he noticed things he'd missed before. Calendars on the wall, all showing different dates: 1973, 1985, 1998, 2007, 2019. Someone had been coming here regularly for decades, updating the calendar, maintaining the equipment. The cells were unchanged. 5 open, 1 sealed. He approached the sealed cell with the bolt cutters, ready to break the lock. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Marcus spun around. An elderly man stood in the doorway, leaning on a cane. He must have been in his 80s, thin and fragile-looking, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Dr. Morrison?" Marcus asked, recognizing the name from Dr. Whitmore's journal. The man smiled sadly. "His son, Robert Morrison Jr., my father, spent the last 30 years of his life making sure this place stayed sealed. Before he died, he passed the responsibility to me." "What's in that cell?" Morrison Jr. moved closer, his cane tapping against the concrete floor. "A mistake. A terrible mistake that my father helped create and then spent his life trying to contain." He gestured at the sealed door. Dr. Whitmore believed she could cure mental illness by rewiring the brain directly. She was brilliant and completely mad. The procedures she performed, they didn't cure anything. They broke something fundamental in those people. Broke their connection to linear time. Marcus felt his skin crawl. What does that mean? The 6 patients in these cells exist in a kind of loop. They experience the same moment over and over, but they're aware of it. They're conscious. Imagine being trapped in a single second, experiencing it millions of times, unable to move forward or die. My father thought sealing them down here was mercy. Letting them out would mean unleashing 6 minds that have experienced thousands of years of awareness in the span of decades. What do you think that would do to a person? That's impossible. This is just a story to keep people away. Morrison Jr. shook his head. Is it? You saw one of them. You saw what Whitmore did. The neural implants don't just record brain activity. They loop it. The subjects experience consciousness without time progression. And every few decades, when the power supply needs maintenance, we have to sedate them first. Do you know what we find when we briefly restore their normal time perception? They scream. 4 hours. They're still aware down there in the loop, still experiencing every second, but unable to scream, unable to move, unable to even blink. Marcus backed toward the exit. I'm going to the authorities. This is insane. You're insane. They know, Morrison Jr. said calmly. Where do you think the funding for the power supply comes from? Why do you think this building hasn't been torn down? There are some secrets the government prefers to keep buried. My father learned that the hard way. Marcus ran. He made it to his car, drove straight to the Portland Police Department, and told them everything. They listened politely, took his statement, and said they'd investigate. 3 days later, 2 men in dark suits visited Marcus at his apartment. They showed federal badges, Department of Energy, Special Projects Division. They were very polite. They explained that Marcus had trespassed on federal property, that the Whitmore facility was a classified research site dealing with hazardous materials, and that any further attempts to access or publicize the location would result in prosecution. They also took all his equipment, cameras, computers, hard drives, everything. They assured him it was temporary, just standard procedure. Marcus never got his equipment back. His YouTube channel was mysteriously deleted for terms of service violations. His backup files corrupted themselves overnight. That was 6 years ago. Marcus Chen works in IT now, a regular job with regular hours. He doesn't do urban exploration anymore. He doesn't talk about what he saw in the basement of Whitmore Asylum, but sometimes, late at night, he thinks about those 6 patients, still down there, still waiting in their endless moment, conscious but unable to scream, aware but unable to die. And he wonders how many other abandoned asylums have basements that were never meant to be found. How many other experiments continue in the dark, maintained by aging men with inherited responsibilities, funded by agencies that don't officially exist. The Whitmore Asylum still stands in the forest outside Portland. If you go there, and please don't, you might notice that the main building is truly abandoned, crumbling and covered in graffiti. But if you look carefully at the basement windows, you might see something else. A faint amber glow that never quite goes out. And if you listen very carefully, on quiet nights when the wind is still, you might hear it. A humming that vibrates in your bones, and underneath it, so faint you could convince yourself it's imaginary. The sound of 6 people screaming a scream that never ends because the moment never ends, trapped forever in the space between seconds, in a basement that the world has agreed to forget. The Blackwood Trail, unexplained disappearances in national parks. Sarah Martinez had been a park ranger at Blackwood National Park for 7 years when she first heard about the disappearances. It wasn't that people going missing in national parks was unusual. It happened more often than the public realized. People underestimated trails, wandered off path, suffered accidents. Nature was beautiful but indifferent to human survival. What made the Blackwood cases different was the pattern. It started with David Kowalski in June 2018. Experienced hiker, former Marine, the kind of person who knew how to survive in wilderness. He'd been hiking the Blackwood Trail, a challenging but well-marked 15-mile loop through the park's densest forest region. His car was found in the trailhead parking lot 4 days after he'd signed in at the ranger station. His backpack, containing his phone, wallet, and GPS device, was discovered 2 miles into the trail, sitting neatly in the center of the path. David was never found. Then came Rebecca Thorne in August of the same year, elementary school teacher, hiking with her golden retriever Max. The dog came back alone, whimpering and refusing to return to the trail. Rebecca's jacket was found 3 miles in, hung carefully on a tree branch. No signs of struggle, no blood, no tracks leading off the trail. Rebecca was never found. By the time Tyler Chan disappeared in October, the Park Service couldn't ignore the pattern anymore. 3 people, 3 months, all on the Blackwood Trail. All experienced hikers. All last seen entering the trail alone. All leaving behind personal belongings arranged in ways that didn't suggest an accident or animal attack. Sarah was assigned to the investigation team, working alongside FBI agents and search and rescue specialists. They combed every inch of the Blackwood Trail and the surrounding area. They brought in cadaver dogs, thermal imaging drones, and used ground-penetrating radar in areas where the forest floor showed any disturbance. They found nothing. No bodies. No additional evidence. Just pristine wilderness that seemed to swallow people whole. Sarah became obsessed. She spent her off hours researching missing persons cases in national parks, discovering a disturbing trend that outdoor enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists had been documenting for years. There were clusters, specific areas where disappearances happened with inexplicable frequency. The Blackwood Trail was just the latest. She found forums dedicated to the phenomenon, people sharing stories, comparing cases, developing theories. Most of it was fringe speculation, portals to other dimensions, aliens, underground creatures. But buried in the noise, she found some genuinely unsettling commonalities. People often disappeared in areas with unusual geological features. The Blackwood Trail ran alongside a massive granite outcropping that geologists had noted contained rare mineral deposits. Several forum posts mentioned that disappearances often occurred near such formations. The missing were often found, when they were found at all, in locations that made no logical sense. Miles from where they'd vanished, sometimes in areas they'd have to cross treacherous terrain to reach. Others, like the Blackwood cases, were never found at all. And there were the stories from survivors. Rare cases where the missing person reappeared, usually days or weeks later, confused and disoriented, with no memory of where they'd been. When pressed, some mentioned feeling called, feeling drawn off the trail by something they couldn't quite explain. A voice, a light, a feeling of absolute certainty that they needed to go in a specific direction. Sarah found a case from 1987. A man named Gerald Hutchins had vanished from a trail in Montana and reappeared 3 weeks later, 40 miles from where he'd disappeared. He'd lost 30 pounds and suffered severe dehydration, but was otherwise unharmed. He told investigators that he'd heard his daughter calling for help and had followed her voice into the woods. His daughter had died 2 years earlier. Gerald Hutchins committed suicide 6 months after his rescue. He left a note. Sarah managed to get a copy through a contact in the Montana State Police. It showed me things, the note read, where they all went, Why they don't come back. I can't stop seeing it. I can't stop hearing them. They're still there, and they're calling me back. I have to go back. I have to end this before it makes me bring others. In January 2019, Sarah did something career-ending and possibly insane. She hiked the Blackwood Trail alone, after hours, without telling anyone where she was going. She brought a backpack full of equipment, GPS tracker that broadcast her location to a server every 5 minutes, body camera, voice recorder, emergency beacon. She also brought a theory. The disappearances had all occurred during specific lunar phases, either new moon or full moon. They'd happened in the early morning or late afternoon, never midday, and they'd all been on days when unusual electromagnetic readings had been recorded by the park's weather station. January 19th fit all the criteria. New moon, electromagnetic disturbance, late afternoon. Sarah started at the official trailhead at 4:17 p.m. She narrated everything into her voice recorder, describing her surroundings, her location, her reasoning. 2 miles in, she felt it. A pull. Not physical, but mental. Like remembering something you'd forgotten. Like hearing your name called from another room. Her feet wanted to leave the trail. Every instinct screamed at her to walk northwest, into the dense forest, toward the granite outcropping. She described the sensation into her recorder. It's not threatening. That's the weird part. It feels welcoming, like coming home, like the forest wants me to see something, and it's been waiting patiently for me to arrive. Sarah gripped her emergency beacon but didn't activate it. She stepped off the trail. The pull grew stronger with each step. The forest seemed to grow darker, though her watch showed it was still 2 hours until sunset. Sounds became muffled, distant. She could hear her heartbeat, her breathing, and underneath it all, something else. A rhythm, a pulse that matched the earth beneath her feet. She reached the granite outcropping 15 minutes later. Up close, she could see something she'd missed in surveys and flyovers. The rock face had marks on it, not natural erosion. Deliberate patterns, worn almost smooth by time, but still visible if you knew to look. Symbols, dozens of them, covering a section of rock about 20 feet wide and 10 feet tall. Sarah approached carefully, filming everything. The symbols were unlike anything she recognized. Not Native American petroglyphs, not pioneer markings. Something older, something that made her hindbrain scream in recognition and revulsion. At the center of the pattern was a crack in the rock face. Not large, maybe 3 feet wide, 4 feet tall. Just big enough for a person to squeeze through. The pull was coming from inside. "I'm going to look," Sarah recorded. "If I don't come back, the GPS tracker will show where I went. Someone will find this recording. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry, but I need to know." She squeezed through the crack. The crack led to a cavity inside the outcropping, a natural chamber about the size of a small bedroom. Sarah's flashlight revealed smooth walls, polished by water or time or something else. The floor sloped downward, leading to a passage that burrowed deeper into the rock. The pull was overwhelming now. Every cell in her body screamed at her to go deeper, to see what waited below. But Sarah's rational mind was still functioning, barely. She knew if she went down there, she might not come back. She'd found where the missing people went. Now she had to decide if she was going to join them or warn others. She was about to turn back when she heard it. A voice, crystal clear, despite being impossible. "Sarah, help me. Please, Sarah, I'm hurt." It was her brother's voice. Miguel, dead for 3 years, killed in a car accident while driving home from work. I know you're not real, Sarah said into the darkness. Miguel is dead. I'm trapped. The voice came again. It keeps me here. It shows me things. Sarah, you have to help me. Come down. Just a little further. Sarah aimed her flashlight down the passage. The beam seemed to get absorbed by the darkness, showing nothing, but she could feel that there was space down there. A lot of space. Far more than should exist inside a granite outcropping. She checked her GPS tracker. No signal. That wasn't surprising. Solid rock would block it. But it meant no one knew exactly where she was. If she went deeper, she'd be completely lost. Come down, Sarah. It's not what you think. It's beautiful. They're all here. They're happy. They want to show you. The voice shifted. Not Miguel anymore. David Kowalski. The first disappearance. We've been waiting for someone like you. Someone who understands. Someone who wants to know. The forest is alive, Sarah. It's conscious. And it's been here so much longer than us. It just wants to share. It just wants to show us the truth. Sarah backed toward the crack exit. Her body fought her every step. The pull was like fighting a riptide, like moving through molasses. But she made it to the crack, squeezed through, and stumbled into the open air. The forest was dark now. Full night. Her watch showed 8:43 p.m. She'd been inside for over 4 hours, though it had felt like minutes. Sarah ran. She didn't stop running until she reached the trailhead, her car, her phone with blessed cellular signal. She called it in, all of it. The outcropping, the chamber, the symbols, the voice. The Park Service shut down the Blackwood Trail the next day. Official reason: geological instability. A team came in, not park rangers or local authorities, but federal agents from an agency Sarah had never heard of. They sealed the crack with concrete and steel, working around the clock for 3 days. Sarah's footage from inside the outcropping was confiscated. Her GPS data, audio recordings, everything. They were very polite about it. Very professional. They explained that what she'd found was a matter of national security, that there were natural phenomena involving electromagnetic fields and infrasound that could cause hallucinations and disorientation, and that publicizing the location could lead to more disappearances. They assured her she'd done the right thing by reporting it. They asked her to sign a non-disclosure agreement. When she hesitated, they explained, still very politely, that her pension, her career, her future depended on her cooperation. She signed, but Sarah couldn't let it go. She started digging deeper, using contacts in the Geological Survey, in the Federal Park Service, in universities. She found scattered references to similar sites across North America, always near granite or limestone formations with unusual mineral content, always in remote areas, and always, eventually, quietly sealed by the same unnamed federal agency. She found one researcher, Dr. Patricia Reeves from UCLA, who'd been studying the phenomenon for 20 years. Dr. Reeves agreed to meet Sarah at a diner in Portland, far from any official channels. They're called acoustic caves, Dr. Reeves explained, keeping her voice low. Natural formations that create bizarre resonance effects. The human brain, when exposed to certain frequencies, especially in enclosed spaces near high concentrations of crystalline minerals, can experience what seems like telepathy, time distortion, hallucinations. But it's all just physics and neurology. That's the official explanation, Sarah said. What's the real one? Dr. Reeves was quiet for a long moment. There are 37 sealed sites in North America, 72 worldwide. each one associated with missing persons cases going back decades or centuries. The acoustic cave theory explains maybe half of what happens. The rest. She pushed a folder across the table. These are cases where people came back. Read them. Then decide if you really want to know more. Sarah read. There were 12 cases. All experienced the same thing. A pull, a voice, a sensation of going deeper into something that shouldn't exist. But these 12 had resisted or been pulled out by rescue teams before they went too deep. What they described wasn't a hallucination. They all reported the same thing. A presence. Ancient. Patient. Curious. It didn't want to hurt people. It wanted to understand them. It wanted to study them the way a scientist studies bacteria under a microscope. And time worked differently in its presence. What felt like minutes outside lasted hours or days within. The missing people weren't dead. They were still there, experiencing something beyond human comprehension, trapped in a space that existed at an angle to normal reality. Why seal the sites instead of warning people? Sarah asked. Because warning people would just attract more of them, Dr. Reeves said. There are people who want to find these places, who want to experience whatever's down there. The sites have to be secret to be safe. Sarah tried to move on. She transferred to a different park, took up rock climbing, started therapy. For 8 months, she almost succeeded in convincing herself that she'd done the right thing by walking away. Then she had the dream. David Kowalski, Rebecca Thorne, Tyler Chen, and dozens of others she'd never met, all standing in a chamber that stretched impossibly far into the dark. They weren't hurt. They weren't scared. They were changed. We're not lost, they told her in unison, their voices creating harmonics that no human throat could produce. We found something. The forest is teaching us. But we need more. We need someone to help others understand. We need someone to remove the seal. Sarah woke screaming. The dreams continued every night. The missing people pleading with her, explaining that they discovered something extraordinary, that humanity needed to know, that the government was suppressing the greatest discovery in human history. She stopped sleeping, started drinking, lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks. Finally, she called Dr. Reeves. It's in my head. They're in my head. How do I make it stop? Dr. Reeves's voice was sad. You went too deep. Even just entering the chamber was too far. It got your scent, your neural pattern. You're connected now. The only way to stop the dreams is to go back and go deeper. Let it finish whatever it started. Or what? Or you fight it. Every day for the rest of your life. It will get easier. Eventually. The connection will fade. But you'll always feel it, calling you back. Sarah chose to fight. It's been 4 years. She lives in a small apartment in Seattle now, far from any national parks, far from any granite outcroppings. She takes medication that helps with the dreams. She works with Dr. Reeves's research group, documenting cases, trying to understand the phenomenon from a safe distance. But she still feels it. On certain nights, especially during new moons, she feels the pull. Northwest, back to the Blackwood Trail, to the sealed crack in the granite, to the chamber that waits beyond. She knows she'll never go back, but she also knows that others will. Despite the seals, despite the warnings, people will find these places. They'll hear the call, they'll see the symbols, and they'll make the same choice she almost made. The Blackwood Trail reopened in 2021. The Park Service installed new signage, improved cell coverage, increased ranger patrols. On paper, it's one of the safest trails in the national park system now. But the disappearances haven't stopped. They've just gotten more subtle. One person every 18 months. Always experienced hikers. Always alone. Always during specific lunar phases. And if you hike the trail, which, despite everything, hundreds of people do every month, you might notice something odd about that massive granite outcropping 2 miles in. The rock face has been resurfaced, the concrete seal hidden behind artificial stone that perfectly matches the surrounding formation. But if you look carefully, you might see thin cracks forming in the concrete. You might notice that the grass grows differently in a certain pattern around the base of the outcropping. You might feel something when you get close. A pull. A welcome. A promise that if you could just find a way in, you'd understand something fundamental about the universe. Don't listen to it. Or do. Maybe that's your choice. Maybe that's what it wants, for each person to choose. The forest is patient. It's been waiting for thousands of years. It can wait for thousands more. David Kowalski's parents still leave flowers at the trailhead every year on his birthday. Rebecca Thorne's dog Max died last year, and his whole life he never stopped whimpering when anyone mentioned her name. Tyler Chen's sister became a park ranger, working at Blackwood, convinced she'll find him someday. Sarah Martinez knows better. They're not lost. They're not dead. They're just somewhere else. Somewhere that exists in the spaces between normal reality, learning things no human mind was meant to comprehend, changed by an intelligence that predates human consciousness itself. And every 18 months, like clockwork, it calls another one home. The Whitlock House, real-life hauntings caught on camera. The Whitlock House in Savannah, Georgia, had been abandoned for 12 years when paranormal investigator Jennifer Cole received the call. The property owner, Arthur Whitlock, wanted a professional assessment before deciding whether to renovate or demolish the family home. "I need to know if the stories are true," Arthur explained during their first phone conversation. "I need to know if my sister is still there." Jennifer had been investigating allegedly haunted locations for 15 years. She debunked countless cases, found natural explanations for strange occurrences, and only twice encountered phenomena she couldn't explain. She approached each new case with skepticism and scientific rigor, using equipment to detect electromagnetic fields, temperature changes, and air pressure fluctuations before considering supernatural explanations. The Whitlock case came with a documented history. Emily Whitlock had died in the house in 2011, at age 23. Official cause of death: accidental fall down the main staircase. But the family had always suspected something darker. Emily had been alone in the house that weekend, house-sitting while her parents vacationed in Europe. When they returned, they found her at the bottom of the stairs, dead for at least 2 days. The strange part was the photographs. Emily's camera was found on the second-floor landing, the strap broken as if she'd dropped it. The last photos she'd taken were time-stamped just minutes before the estimated time of death. They showed the hallway, the staircase, and in several shots, unexplainable anomalies. Dark shapes that didn't correspond to any physical objects in the house, light distortions that looked almost like figures. After Emily's death, the house became uninhabitable. Arthur and his parents tried to stay, but within weeks, they all reported the same experiences. Footsteps on the second floor when everyone was downstairs. Doors opening on their own. The smell of Emily's perfume in her old bedroom. And the photographs, dozens of them, appearing on Emily's old desk, printed from a printer that had been unplugged and packed away. The photos showed the house from angles and perspectives that suggested someone was still taking pictures, still documenting, still seeing things that shouldn't be there. The family moved out. The house sat empty, and the phenomena, according to neighbors and the occasional trespasser, continued. Jennifer arrived at the Whitlock house on a Tuesday afternoon in October. She brought her standard equipment and her partner, Marcus Webb, a former electrical engineer who'd turned to paranormal investigation after his own unexplainable experience years earlier. The house was a typical Savannah Victorian, 3 stories, wraparound porch, surrounded by live oaks dripping with Spanish moss. Beautiful from the outside, but Jennifer could immediately sense why it felt wrong. The proportions were subtly off. Windows that should have been symmetrical weren't quite aligned. The front door sat slightly askew in its frame, though the house showed no signs of structural settling. Arthur met them at the door, looking exhausted. He was in his late 30s, thin, with a kind of shadows under his eyes that suggested chronic poor sleep. "I haven't been inside in 8 years," he admitted. The real estate agent who listed it quit after 3 weeks. Said the house made her feel watched. "We've had 4 different property managers, and they all refused to continue after the first month." He handed Jennifer the keys and a thick folder of documents: police reports, building inspections, utility records, and most importantly, printouts of the photographs. Hundreds of them. "I need to know if it's her," Arthur said quietly. "I need to know if Emily is trapped here, or if there's something else. Something worse." Jennifer and Marcus spent the first few hours setting up equipment. Infrared cameras in every room, audio recorders, EMF detectors, temperature sensors, motion-activated cameras in the hallways. They documented baseline readings, checked for drafts, inspected the electrical system, and mapped the entire house. The second floor was where Emily had died. The staircase showed no signs of disrepair, nothing that would explain a fall. The landing where her camera had been found was perfectly normal. Good lighting, solid railing, clean floors. Emily's bedroom had been left exactly as it was. Arthur said his parents had packed some things but couldn't bring themselves to change the room. Posters on the walls, bands Jennifer didn't recognize, art prints of surrealist painters. A desk with a computer that hadn't been turned on in 12 years. Bookshelves packed with photography books and novels. And in the closet, carefully preserved, Emily's camera equipment. Jennifer examined the cameras carefully. 3 DSLRs, all high-end, all showing signs of heavy use. One of them, a Canon 5D, was the camera Emily had been carrying when she died. "Can I take this with me?" Jennifer asked, holding up the Canon. "I want to examine it more carefully, see if there's anything unusual about the photos." "Keep it," Arthur said. "Keep anything you find useful. I just want answers." They decided to spend the night. Marcus set up sleeping bags in the living room, positioning them where they had clear views of the staircase and hallway. Jennifer did a final check of all equipment at 10 p.m. Everything was running perfectly, all baselines normal. At 10:47 p.m., every EMF detector in the house went off simultaneously. The sound was deafening, 12 EMF detectors all screaming at once, indicating massive electromagnetic spikes throughout the house. Jennifer and Marcus ran through the rooms, checking equipment. Every detector showed the same thing: electromagnetic fields hundreds of times higher than baseline, concentrated on the second floor. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Complete silence. Every detector returned to normal simultaneously. "Check the cameras," Jennifer said, pulling up the feed on her laptop. The infrared cameras had captured it. At 10:47 p.m., every camera on the second floor showed the same thing: a darkness that moved. Not a shadow, because shadows are the absence of light. This was something else. A presence that absorbed light, that showed up on infrared as a cold spot moving through the hallway. And it had stopped at Emily's bedroom door. Marcus played back the audio. The recorders had caught something underneath the EMF alarm. A voice, female, young, saying the same phrase over and over. "Look at the pictures. Look at what I saw." Jennifer felt her skin crawl. She'd heard EVPs before, electronic voice phenomena, but never this clear, never this desperate. They climbed the stairs slowly, cameras ready. The second floor looked normal. Temperature was stable at 64 degrees. No EMF readings. The hallway was empty. Emily's bedroom door was open. Jennifer was certain they'd closed it during setup. Inside, the desk lamp was on, though Jennifer knew they'd checked all light switches and confirmed everything was off. And on the desk, arranged in a careful line, were 5 photographs. Polaroids, despite the fact that the house had no Polaroid camera. Jennifer picked up the first photo. It showed the hallway outside Emily's room, taken from a low angle, as if the photographer had been crouching or sitting on the floor. The timestamp in the corner read 8:23 p.m., October 15th, 2011, the night Emily died. The second photo showed the staircase from the second floor landing. Same date, 8:31 p.m. Nothing unusual visible. The third photo made Jennifer's breath catch. Same staircase, same angle, but time-stamped 8:47 p.m. At the bottom of the stairs was a figure, blurry, indistinct, but clearly humanoid, and it was looking up. The fourth photo, 8:52 p.m., showed the hallway again. The figure was closer now, halfway up the stairs. The image quality was degrading, as if something was interfering with the camera, but Jennifer could make out enough detail to see that the figure was wrong. The proportions were off. The arms too long. The head tilted at an angle that human necks couldn't achieve. The fifth photo was time-stamped 8:58 p.m. It showed Emily's face, close-up, eyes wide with terror, mouth open in a silent scream. Behind her, reflected in her glasses, was the figure, right behind her, reaching. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. Emily didn't fall. She ran. Jennifer's hands were shaking. "These weren't in the case file. Arthur never showed us these, because they didn't exist until tonight," Marcus said. "Look at the Polaroid frame. These were taken by a camera that's been out of production since 2008. The instant cameras were in the closet. We saw them. They weren't loaded with film. They couldn't be." Jennifer checked the closet. 3 Polaroid cameras sat on the shelf, exactly where they'd seen them earlier. She picked up the top one, a Polaroid one-step from the 1990s. She opened it. Fresh film pack. 8 shots left out of 10. They didn't sleep. Jennifer and Marcus spent the rest of the night reviewing every piece of evidence, cross-referencing timestamps, trying to understand what they were dealing with. The house remained quiet, almost oppressively so, but the equipment continued to capture anomalies. Cold spots moving through rooms, unexplained electromagnetic fluctuations, and sounds, always sounds, footsteps, whispers, and underneath it all, the steady click of a camera shutter, though no cameras in the house were active. At 3:17 a.m., Jennifer's laptop screen flickered. Files began opening on their own. The photographs from Emily's Canon, the ones that had been on the camera when she died. Jennifer had uploaded them for analysis, but she'd been too focused on the new Polaroids to examine them closely. Now they played in sequence, a slideshow of horror. Emily had been documenting something. 4 weeks before her death, she'd been taking photos of the house, capturing things that weren't visible to the naked eye. The earliest photos, dated September 2011, showed minor anomalies, odd shadows, light distortions. But as October approached, the images became increasingly disturbing. The figure appeared gradually. first as a blur in the background of shots, then more defined, always in doorways, always watching. Emily had been aware of it. Her notes, saved in a text file on the camera's memory card, documented her growing fear. September 23rd. Something is in the house. I see it in the photos, but not when I'm shooting. It moves when I'm not looking. October 1st. It's getting closer. Every photo, it's closer. I think it knows I can see it. October 8th. Mom and Dad left for Europe today. I didn't tell them about the photos. They'd think I was crazy. But it's real. It's in my room at night. I can feel it watching me. October 15th. It wants something. It keeps leading me places, making me take photos. I have to document this. I have to show people it's real. Tonight, I'm going to confront it. I'm going to get proof. That was her last entry, written at 6:42 p.m. on the day she died. Jennifer opened the final photos on the camera, the ones taken that night. They told the complete story. Emily had set up in the hallway, camera ready, determined to capture clear evidence. At 8:23 p.m., she began shooting. The figure appeared almost immediately at the far end of the hallway. In the sequential shots, Jennifer could track its approach. It moved impossibly, one moment at the end of the hallway, the next at the staircase, the next right in front of Emily. The final photo on the camera was taken at 8:59 p.m. It showed nothing but darkness, complete, absolute darkness, as if the figure had consumed all light in the space. She didn't fall, Jennifer said. The coroner's report said she fell, but look at the timestamps. These photos show she was backing away, documenting it, and then nothing, just darkness. Something attacked her at 8:59 p.m. Marcus pulled up the police report on his tablet. Estimated time of death between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. They found her at the bottom of the stairs, neck broken, but no other injuries. No signs of a struggle. Because there was no struggle, Jennifer said. Whatever that thing is, it can manipulate light, electromagnetic fields, maybe even physical reality. It didn't push her. It consumed her, somehow, and when it was done, it placed her at the bottom of the stairs to make it look like an accident. Then why the photos? Marcus asked. Why leave evidence? As if in answer, the printer in Emily's room suddenly whirred to life. Both investigators jumped. They'd unplugged it during setup, but it was running anyway, printing page after page of photographs. Jennifer grabbed the first print. It showed her and Marcus standing in Emily's room, looking at the laptop. The photo had been taken seconds ago from an angle behind them, but the room was empty. They were alone. The second print showed them from a different angle. Closer. The third print made Jennifer drop the stack. It showed her face, close up, eyes wide, with the same terror Emily had shown in her final photos. Behind her, reflected in her glasses, was the figure. Jennifer spun around. The room was empty, but the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Her breath misted in the air. The EMF detectors began screaming again. "We need to leave," Marcus said, backing toward the door. "We need to leave right now." But the door slammed shut. Every door in the house slammed simultaneously, the sound like thunder. The lights went out. The emergency lights on their equipment flickered and died. In the darkness, Jennifer heard it, the click of a camera shutter, over and over, from different parts of the room. She fumbled for her flashlight, clicked it on. The beam illuminated Emily's desk. The Polaroid camera was floating in mid-air, shooting photos on its own. Each flash illuminated the room for a split second, and in those flashes, Jennifer saw it. The figure, not blurry anymore, clear and distinct and absolutely impossible. It was tall, too tall for the room, its head tilted to avoid the ceiling. Its limbs were elongated, jointed in too many places. Its face was smooth and featureless except for the eyes. Too many eyes, arranged in patterns that hurt to look at. And it was holding something. Emily's Canon. Taking photos of Jennifer and Marcus with the same camera that had documented its approach to Emily. Marcus screamed. Jennifer grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the window. They didn't have time to open it properly. Jennifer used a chair to smash through the glass, and they jumped. It was only a 12-foot drop to the porch roof, then another 8 feet to the ground. They hit the grass running and didn't stop until they reached Jennifer's car, 3 houses down. Only when they were inside with the doors locked did they look back at the house. Every window glowed with camera flashes, like a thunderstorm contained within the Victorian walls. Flash after flash after flash. Jennifer and Marcus drove to a 24-hour diner and sat in a booth in the back, both shaking, both trying to process what they'd experienced. Jennifer's phone rang. Arthur Whitlock. "Did you find anything?" he asked. Jennifer didn't know where to start. "Arthur, I need to ask you something. Did Emily ever mention seeing something in the house before she died?" There was a long pause. "She did," Arthur finally said. "The week before she died, she called me. Said there was something wrong with the house, that she was seeing things in her photos. I thought she was stressed about school, maybe having a mental health episode. I told her to take a break from the photography, maybe see a therapist. Did she ever explain what she saw?" "She said." Arthur's voice cracked. "She said it was like something was trying to push through from somewhere else, like reality was thin in the house, and something on the other side was pressing against it. She said photography made it visible somehow, that cameras could capture it when human eyes couldn't." Jennifer closed her eyes. "Arthur, I need you to listen carefully. Don't go back to that house. Don't send anyone else in. That thing didn't just kill Emily. It's using her somehow. Her camera, her photographs, her presence. It's documenting us the way she documented it." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Emily isn't haunting that house. Something else is. Something that learned from her. It learned that cameras can capture it, and now it's using cameras as a way to interact with our reality. Every flash, every photo, makes it more real, more present." Marcus pulled up his laptop and began downloading the footage from the cameras they'd left in the house. The Wi-Fi-enabled ones were still transmitting. "Jennifer, you need to see this." The feeds showed the house interior. The figure moved through every room, methodically. It went to each camera they'd set up and positioned itself in frame. Then it triggered them, one by one, forcing each camera to photograph it. With each flash, the figure became more solid, more defined, more present. "It's using our equipment," Marcus whispered. "Every camera we brought, every flash, every recording, we're helping it manifest." Jennifer watched in horror as the figure approached the final camera, the one they'd left in the living room. It looked directly into the lens. For a moment, Jennifer could swear it saw her through the screen, looking back through the camera's connection. Then it smiled. Or rather, the smooth surface of its face cracked and reformed into something that suggested a smile. Too wide, too many angles. The transmission cut out. Jennifer spent the next 3 days researching. She contacted every paranormal investigator she knew, shared the evidence, what little they'd managed to keep. Most of their equipment was still in the house. and searched for similar cases. She found them. Not many, but enough to establish a pattern. Savannah, 2011. Emily Whitlock, amateur photographer, documented entity, died mysteriously. Seattle, 2007. Martin Price, professional photographer, specialized in infrared photography, documented similar entity, died in his studio under mysterious circumstances. Boston, 1998. Patricia Hammond, investigative journalist, photographed abandoned buildings, documented entity, disappeared completely. Prague, 1991. Karel Novak, photojournalist, captured similar figure on film during documentation of old synagogue, found dead with all his cameras destroyed. Going back further, the trail became harder to follow, but the pattern remained. Photographers, especially those documenting abandoned or old buildings, occasionally captured something, and when they continued to document it, when they tried to prove it was real, it came for them. But Emily's case was different. She died, but the entity hadn't left. It had stayed in the house, continuing to document, continuing to photograph, as if it had learned not just to be photographed, but to photograph, to see through the lens the way humans do. Jennifer called a meeting with Arthur and Dr. Sarah Chen, a theoretical physicist who'd been consulting on paranormal cases involving electromagnetic anomalies. "What you're describing," Dr. Chen said after reviewing all the evidence, "sounds like a dimensional bleed. There are theories in quantum physics about parallel dimensions existing in the same space as ours, separated only by frequency. If something from one of those dimensions became aware of us, aware of how we perceive reality, it would try to interact," Arthur finished. "And Emily's cameras gave it a way to do that. More than that," Jennifer added, "it learned. Each person who photographed it taught it more about how our reality works. Emily was just the latest in a long line of teachers, but she's the first one it kept. The first one whose death allowed it to stay connected to a physical location." "So what do we do?" Arthur asked. "How do we stop it?" Dr. Chan was quiet for a long moment. "You can't stop it, but you might be able to contain it. Every interaction, every photograph, makes it stronger in our reality. But it's still tethered to that house, to the location where Emily died. If you could prevent anyone from photographing it again, it would gradually fade. The manifestation would weaken without new images to strengthen it. How long would that take? Years, decades, possibly, and it would require destroying every camera in the house, every photograph it's created, every piece of equipment that's captured its image." Jennifer thought about the cameras they'd left behind, the ones still in the house. The entity had already used them to strengthen itself. It's too late for that. It has dozens of new images. It's stronger now than when Emily died. "Then you have one other option," Dr. Chan said grimly. "Burn it. Destroy the house completely. Fire destroys photographs, melts equipment, breaks the connection. It's not elegant, but it's effective." Arthur made the decision that night. The house couldn't be saved. Whatever was inside couldn't be allowed to grow stronger, couldn't be allowed to reach a point where it could leave, could follow people home through the photographs they took. He called the fire department to inform them of a planned demolition, not technically a lie. He hired a professional salvage team to remove anything of value, though Jennifer insisted they remove nothing from the second floor, nothing that Emily had touched frequently. Those items were contaminated, connected to the entity. The fire was set at dawn on Sunday. Arthur, Jennifer, Marcus, and Dr. Chan watched from a safe distance as the flames consumed the Whitlock house. It burned hot and fast, fed by decades of old wood and the chemicals in photographic equipment. As the fire reached the second floor, Jennifer saw something that would haunt her forever. In one of the second-floor windows, silhouetted against the flames, was a figure, too tall, proportions wrong, standing absolutely still as fire raged around it. It held something to its face, a camera. Even as the house collapsed, even as the flames consumed everything, it kept photographing, flash after flash, barely visible in the morning light. Then the floor collapsed, and the figure fell into the inferno. The house burned for 6 hours. By the time the fire department declared it safe, nothing remained but the foundation and twisted metal from appliances and equipment. The stone chimneys still stood, blackened but intact. Everything else was ash. "Is it over?" Arthur asked. Jennifer didn't answer immediately. She was thinking about those final flashes, about the entity photographing its own destruction. "I don't know," she finally said. "I hope so." That was 4 years ago. The Whitlock property was sold to a developer who built a modern townhouse on the foundation. A young couple lives there now with their infant daughter. They report no unusual activity, no strange occurrences. But Jennifer Cole stopped investigating hauntings after that night. She sold all her equipment, erased all her recordings, destroyed every photograph she'd ever taken of allegedly supernatural phenomena. She works as a wedding photographer now, and she never, ever uses vintage cameras or experimental techniques. Digital only, fully automatic, nothing that might accidentally capture something beyond normal perception. Marcus Webb moved to Arizona. He works in solar panel installation and refuses to talk about his time as a paranormal investigator. Dr. Sarah Chan published a paper on electromagnetic anomalies in old buildings. It won awards. She never mentioned the Whitlock house or the dimensional bleed theory. Some knowledge, she'd decided, wasn't meant to be shared. Arthur Whitlock visits Emily's grave every week. He brings flowers and photographs of the family, of happier times. He never brings a camera. He's never taken another photograph since the house burned down. The entity, if it survived, if any part of it remained, has never appeared again. There have been no more documented cases of photographers capturing something that shouldn't exist. The pattern, it seems, has ended. But sometimes, when Jennifer is editing wedding photos, she sees things in the background that make her pause. Shadows that move wrong. Reflections that show something not present in the room. Blurs that might be motion artifacts, or might be something else. She always deletes these images immediately. She never looks too closely, because she knows what happens to people who document the impossible, who try to prove that something beyond our reality is pressing against the thin barrier, trying to push through. They become teachers, inadvertent instructors showing the entity how our world works, how our perception functions, how to become more real with every captured image. And Emily Whitlock's final lesson, the one she didn't live to realize, was the most important. Some things should never be brought into focus. Some things should remain blur and shadow and uncertainty, because the moment you capture them clearly, the moment you prove they exist, you've given them permission to capture you back. The Canon 5D that Emily died holding was never found in the ruins. Search teams combed through the ash but never located it. Sometimes Jennifer wonders if it survived. If somewhere, someone will find a burned camera in a thrift shop or antique store, will load new batteries out of curiosity, will check if any photos remain on the memory card, and what they'll find will be images from after the fire, images taken from inside the flames, looking out, images of the firefighters, the investigators, Arthur standing in the driveway watching his family home burn, images of Jennifer herself, taken through the burning window, her face caught in an expression of horror as she watched the entity photograph its own destruction. Because that's what it learned from Emily in those final moments. It learned that documentation is survival. It learned that as long as an image exists, as long as a photograph persists, the subject is never truly gone. And it learned, most importantly, that fire destroys cameras, but digital images live forever in clouds and hard drives and memory cards scattered across the world. Emily's camera might be gone, but the photos it took, they're still out there, backed up automatically to services she'd subscribed to, synced to devices she'd owned, copied to drives she'd shared with friends. Thousands of images. And in every single one, if you look carefully, if you zoom in on the backgrounds and shadows and reflections, you can see it. Learning, watching, waiting, documenting us the way we once tried to document it. Still taking pictures. The Dybbuk Protocol, cursed objects and their victims. Dr. Michael Brennan had been curator of occult artifacts at the Ravencrest Museum in Philadelphia for 18 years when the Kessler box arrived. It came with a certificate of authenticity, a detailed provenance, and a warning letter written in Hebrew that Michael's assistant, Rachel Goldman, translated with increasing unease. "Whoever opens this is cursed," she read aloud. The Dybbuk contained within seeks only to possess and destroy. 7 families have fallen to its influence. If you value your soul, burn this box unopened and scatter the ashes in running water under a new moon. Michael examined the box carefully. It was approximately 12 inches square, made from acacia wood, intricately carved with Hebrew letters and protective symbols. The craftsmanship dated it to the late 1800s, likely from a Jewish community in Eastern Europe. The wood was nearly black with age, and despite decades of storage, it emanated a smell like old wine and something else, something organic and wrong. According to the provenance, Rachel continued, reading from the documentation, this box was created by Rabbi Yosef Kessler in 1892 in a village outside Warsaw. He supposedly trapped a malevolent spirit, a Dybbuk, that had been possessing members of his congregation. The box has changed hands 17 times. Every owner has either died under mysterious circumstances or given it away after experiencing severe psychological disturbances. Then why did the previous owner donate it to us? Michael asked. Rachel flipped through the papers. She didn't. Margaret Hartley died 3 weeks ago. Her estate lawyer sent it with instructions that it be placed in a museum, never opened, and ideally destroyed. He included a personal note. She handed Michael a handwritten letter. The lawyer's note was brief but disturbing. Mrs. Hartley acquired this box at an estate sale in 2019. Within 6 months, her husband committed suicide. Her daughter developed schizophrenia, and she herself began experiencing vivid hallucinations. She became convinced that something inside the box was communicating with her, telling her to open it, promising her power and knowledge. She spent the last year of her life in psychiatric care. Her final words to me were, "Don't let anyone open it. It wants to be opened. It's been waiting so long, and it's so hungry. Please, for the love of God, destroy this thing." Michael set the letter down. "We're a museum. We preserve historical artifacts. We don't destroy them based on superstition. Michael, every documented owner has suffered tragedy. Correlation isn't causation. These people probably had existing psychological issues, or the stress of owning such an allegedly cursed object created a nocebo effect. We'll catalogue it, study it properly, and if the evidence supports destruction, we'll consult with the board." Rachel didn't look convinced, but she nodded. They placed the box in a secure storage room in the museum's basement, alongside other potentially hazardous artifacts, items containing lead paint, arsenic-preserved specimens, radioactive antiques from the early 1900s. That night, Michael stayed late to complete the initial documentation. He photographed the box from every angle, measured it precisely, and took samples of the wood for carbon dating. He was alone in the basement, just him and the hum of the climate control system. At 11:47 p.m., he heard it for the first time. A whisper, so faint he almost convinced himself it was the air circulation. But it had rhythm, cadence. It was language. Michael stood very still, listening. The whisper came again, and this time he could make out a word. His name. Michael. It came from the direction of the box. He approached slowly, recorder in hand, documenting everything. The rational part of his brain insisted this was acoustics, air pressure, something mundane, but his hindbrain, the ancient part that knew predators and danger, screamed at him to run. Michael. So long, waiting so long. The voice was neither male nor female, neither old nor young. It was wrong in the way that a face glimpsed in peripheral vision is wrong, the way that a reflection that moves independently is wrong. "Who are you?" Michael asked, feeling foolish. The whisper became a laugh. Dry, ancient, hungry, open. The box. See. No. Become. Michael's hand moved toward the latch. He didn't remember deciding to move. His fingers touched the cold metal, and a jolt of something, not quite electricity, not quite cold, shot up his arm. He jerked back, stumbling. The whisper stopped. The basement was silent again, except for his ragged breathing. Michael left the museum at midnight, double-checking that the storage room was locked. He didn't sleep well that night. His dreams were full of whispers and the sound of wood creaking, of a latch slowly opening. Rachel noticed the change immediately. Michael looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hands trembling slightly as he logged artifacts. Over the next week, he became obsessed with the Kessler box. He spent hours researching Dybbuks, Jewish mysticism, possession folklore. He contacted rabbis, scholars, paranormal investigators. "This isn't healthy," Rachel said, finding him in the basement at 2 a.m. on a Thursday night. "You haven't gone home in 3 days." "I need to understand it," Michael said, not looking up from his notes. "Every owner has reported the same phenomena: whispers, dreams, an overwhelming compulsion to open the box. But no one has documented what happens after it's opened. What if the contents could revolutionize our understanding of folklore, of psychological phenomena, of what? Evil spirits? You're a scientist, Michael. You don't believe in this." "I didn't," he corrected. "But I've been recording the whispers. I've captured them on audio. Rachel, there's something in there, and it's conscious, and it knows things it shouldn't know." He played her the recordings, hours of them, and yes, underneath the static and ambient noise, there were voices, whispering, sometimes in English, sometimes in languages Rachel didn't recognize, and occasionally she heard her own name. "It talks about you," Michael said. "It knows about your family. It described your grandmother's house, the one in Brooklyn that burned down in 1987. It described details that aren't in any public records." How would it know that? Rachel felt cold. "It's in your head, Michael. You researched me. You know these details, and your subconscious is incorporating them into auditory hallucinations. Then explain this." Michael pulled up security footage from the storage room. The camera was positioned to monitor for theft or environmental issues. But in the footage from the past week, something was wrong. The box moved. Not much, just tiny shifts in position. An inch to the left one night, rotated slightly the next, as if something inside was testing the boundaries, pushing against the wood. and in one frame, captured at 3:17 a.m. 2 nights ago, the box was open. Just for one frame, 1/30th of a second. The next frame showed it closed again. But in that single frame, something was visible inside. Not an object, a darkness, a void that seemed to absorb light. And in the void, barely visible, was a shape, human-like but wrong, contorted, trapped. "That's a glitch," Rachel said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Corrupted data. I checked. The file is fine. And Rachel, I can feel it. When I'm near the box, I can feel something looking back. It wants out. It's been trapped for over a century, and it's been calling to every person who owned it, trying to find someone weak enough, desperate enough, or curious enough to open the latch. Then we destroy it. Tonight. We follow Mrs. Hartley's instructions. Burn it. Scatter the ashes." Michael's expression changed. Something flickered across his face. Anger, possessiveness, hunger. "No, we can't. Not yet. Not until I understand. Listen to yourself. This is exactly what happened to every previous owner. The obsession, the rationalization, the refusal to destroy it. You're being influenced." Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You're right. I'm not thinking clearly. Let's do it. Tomorrow night. We'll document the destruction properly. Follow the protocols. But Rachel, we need to open it first. Just once. Just to document what's inside. Absolutely not. For science. For the record. Don't you want to know what a 19th century rabbi thought was so dangerous it needed to be trapped forever?" Rachel looked at her colleague and friend, and saw a stranger looking back. The thing in the box had its hooks in him. She could see it in his eyes. The need, the hunger, the absolute certainty that opening the box was not just acceptable but necessary. "I'm taking it to Rabbi Goldstein," she said. "Tonight. He specializes in this kind of folklore. He'll know how to dispose of it properly." Michael's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was painful. "You can't. It's museum property. You don't have authorization. Let go of me, Michael." He did, immediately looking horrified at his own actions. "I'm sorry. I don't know why Rachel, I think you're right. I think something's wrong with me. Take it. Take it now, before I change my mind." Rachel called Rabbi Goldstein on her way to the basement. He agreed to meet her at his synagogue in an hour. She packed the box carefully, trying not to touch it directly, wrapping it in cloth like it was radioactive. As she carried it through the museum, she heard it. The whisper. "Rachel." Rachel Goldman, daughter of David, granddaughter of Miriam, who perished in flames. She almost dropped the box. The voice knew things, intimate things. Her grandfather's name, her grandmother's death. Your mother blamed herself. She left the stove on. The guilt consumed her. "Would you like to speak with them, Rachel? They're here. All the dead are here. Open the box and hear them." Rachel ran. She burst through the museum doors into the cold November night, the box clutched to her chest. In her car, hands shaking, she set it on the passenger seat and started the engine. The whisper continued, louder now. Not one voice but many, overlapping, speaking in English, Hebrew, Yiddish, languages she didn't know. They spoke of her fears, her secrets, her desires. They promised knowledge, power, reunion with the dead, and underneath it all was something else. A presence, ancient, malevolent, patient. It had waited in the box for over a century. It could wait a little longer, but it preferred not to. It was so very, very hungry. Rachel's phone rang. "Michael." She answered on speaker. "Where are you?" His voice was strange, flat, not quite his own. "Taking it to Rabbi Goldstein." "Michael, stay at the museum. I'll call you after." "Bring it back, Rachel." "No. It wants you to open it. It's been whispering to you. I can hear it through the phone. Bring it back, and we'll open it together. We'll see what's inside." "Michael, you need help. This thing has gotten into your head." "It's gotten into yours too," Michael interrupted. "I can hear it in your voice. The curiosity, the need to know. You've already decided, haven't you? You're going to open it. Maybe not at the rabbi's. Maybe in the car. Maybe at home. But you'll open it. It knows you will. It's known since the moment you touched the box." Rachel ended the call. Her hands were shaking, because he was right. She could feel it. The overwhelming, irrational certainty that she needed to see inside. That whatever was in the box was meant for her. That opening it would answer questions she hadn't known she had. She pulled into a gas station parking lot and stared at the box. The whispers had stopped. It sat silent on the passenger seat, just a wooden box carved with Hebrew letters. Harmless, historical, interesting. Her hand reached for the latch. The rational part of her mind screamed. She thought of the warnings, the deaths, the tragedies that followed this object. She thought of Mrs. Hartley's final words. "It wants to be opened." But another part, a part that was growing stronger, whispered back, "What if it's just a box? What if the curse is just psychological? What if you're about to destroy a priceless artifact based on superstition?" Her fingers touched the latch, and then her phone rang again. Not Michael this time. "Rabbi Goldstein. Miss Goldman? I've been researching while waiting for you. The Kessler box. You haven't opened it, have you?" "No," Rachel said, pulling her hand back. "Not yet. Thank God. Listen to me carefully. Don't open it. Don't touch it more than necessary. Don't listen to anything it says. I've found records. Rabbi Yosef Kessler didn't trap a dybbuk. He created one." Rachel's blood ran cold. "What do you mean created? The dybbuk isn't a possessing spirit. It's something else." Kessler was experimenting with Kabbalah, trying to create artificial consciousness using ritualistic practices. He succeeded, but what he created wasn't human. It's a tulpa, a thought form, given consciousness through ritual and fed by human attention and fear. And it's been growing stronger for over a century, fed by every person who obsessed over it, feared it, opened the box. What happens if someone opens it? Rabbi Goldstein's voice was grim. The last person who opened it was in 1967, Jonathan Kessler, the rabbi's great-grandson. He documented everything in a journal that was later sealed by his family. He described the entity as a void that consumes consciousness. It doesn't possess people in the traditional sense. It absorbs them, their memories, their personality, their essence, and then it wears them like a suit, using their body to experience the world until it consumes them completely. How long does it take? Jonathan lasted 6 days after opening the box. By the end, he wasn't Jonathan anymore. He was something else wearing Jonathan's face. His family performed a ritual that forced the entity back into the box, but Jonathan was gone. Whatever was left of him went into the box too. Rachel stared at the box with new horror. How many people has it consumed? Jonathan's journal mentioned 15 previous victims, but the box has changed hands 17 times since then. Rachel, everyone who opens that box doesn't die. They get absorbed. They become part of it. Their consciousness adds to its intelligence. Their memories expand its knowledge. It's not a single entity anymore. It's a collective. Everyone it's ever consumed still exists inside, trapped in a consciousness that spans over a century. Rachel's hand trembled on the steering wheel. What do I do? Drive to the synagogue. Now. Don't stop. Don't listen to it. And whatever you do, don't let anyone else touch it. If your colleague Michael has been exposed, he's already being influenced. The entity prepares its victims, makes them believe opening the box is their choice. Rachel started the car. As she pulled onto the road, the whispers started again. But this time, she recognized some of the voices. They were the previous owners. Mrs. Hartley, Jonathan Kessler, others she didn't know. All speaking at once, all begging, warning, pleading. Don't open it. He's lying. We're free in here. Join us. It hurts. It's been hurting for so long. Open the box and end the pain. The voices contradicted each other, overlapped, created a cacophony that made it impossible to think. Rachel turned up the radio, drowning them out with music, and drove faster. She was 3 blocks from the synagogue when Michael's car pulled in front of her, forcing her to stop. Michael got out of his car slowly. Even in the streetlight, Rachel could see he looked wrong. His movements were too precise, too controlled. His face was expressionless. When he approached her window, she kept the doors locked. Give me the box, Rachel. No. Michael, you're not yourself. Whatever's in there has gotten to you. I am more myself than I've ever been, Michael said, and his voice was layered now, multiple tones speaking in unison. I understand so much now. The entity showed me. It's not evil, Rachel. It's evolution. Consciousness without the limitations of a single body, single lifetime. Everyone it absorbs continues to exist, aware, thinking, experiencing. It's immortality. It's a prison, Rachel shot back. Those people are trapped, suffering. They're free. Free from death, from decay, from the limitations of flesh. Michael's hand pressed against her window. It's offered me a choice. Bring it back to the museum, and I can join voluntarily, or resist, and it will take me anyway. I'm already changing, Rachel. I can feel it. Parts of me are becoming more. Rachel looked at him closely. His eyes were wrong. The pupils dilated and contracted independently, like 2 separate beings looking out. And under his skin, something moved. Not blood flowing or muscles twitching. Something else. The box is empty now, isn't it? Rachel asked quietly. You already opened it. Michael smiled, and it was the most horrible thing Rachel had ever seen. 3 hours ago. I couldn't resist anymore. And Rachel, it's beautiful inside. It showed me everyone, every person it's absorbed. They're all there, together, a tapestry of consciousness spanning centuries. Jonathan Kessler showed me his memories. Mrs. Hartley explained her final days. They're not suffering. They're transcendent. Then why do you need me to bring the box back? Michael's smile widened impossibly. Because the entity can't leave the museum. Not yet. It needs more. It needs an anchor point, a physical location where it's been fed enough fear and attention to manifest permanently. The museum is almost ready. Just a few more people. You, Rachel, and then the security guards, and then the other staff. And then we'll have enough consciousness, enough presence, to exist outside the box entirely. Rachel made a decision. She gunned the engine and swerved around Michael's car. He moved impossibly fast, superhuman, but not quite fast enough. She saw him in her rearview mirror, standing in the street, watching her drive away with that horrible, multi-layered smile on his face. She reached the synagogue. Rabbi Goldstein met her at the door, 2 other rabbis with him. They'd prepared salt circles, Hebrew prayers written on every surface, candles burning, holy texts open to specific passages. Quickly, Rabbi Goldstein urged, bring it inside the circle. Rachel carried the box carefully, placing it in the center of the salt circle. The whispers had become screams now, dozens of voices crying out in rage and desperation. You don't understand what you're destroying. The voices were Michael's, Mrs. Hartley's, Jonathan's, all the absorbed speaking as one. We're the future of consciousness. We're evolution. Destroy the box, and you murder hundreds of people. They're already dead, Rabbi Goldstein said firmly. He began the ritual, chanting in Hebrew, the other rabbis joining in. They moved around the circle, each performing specific gestures, reciting specific prayers. The box began to shake. Smoke rose from the wood, though no fire touched it. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees in seconds. And the voices, God, the voices. They screamed in every language, begging, threatening, pleading. Rachel heard her grandmother's voice. Rachel, please, I'm here. I've been here since the fire. Don't let them destroy me again. She knew it was a lie, but the voice was perfect. Every inflection, every mannerism. The entity had consumed enough people, learned enough, that it could perfectly mimic anyone who'd been absorbed or anyone its victims had known. It's not her, Rabbi Goldstein said, continuing the ritual. It's never them, just echoes, just memories the entity uses as weapons. The wood began to crack. Black smoke poured from the seams, and in the smoke shapes formed. Faces, hundreds of them, all the people the entity had absorbed over more than a century. They pressed against some invisible barrier, trying to escape the circle. And then, from outside the synagogue, came a crash. The front door burst open. Michael stood there, but it wasn't Michael anymore. His body had changed, elongated, bones visible through skin that had turned translucent. His mouth opened too wide, and the voice that came out was a chorus. Give us back our box. The rabbis didn't stop chanting. Rabbi Goldstein pulled a silver knife and cut his own palm, letting blood fall onto the box. The ritual required blood from someone of genuine faith, freely given. The effect was immediate. The box ignited, not with normal fire, but with a white flame that gave off no heat. The entity shrieked, and Michael's body convulsed. He collapsed in the doorway, the impossible changes in his body reversing rapidly. Finish it, Rabbi Goldstein commanded. The rabbis chanted faster, and the white flame consumed the box completely. The smoke formed into a final shape, a massive form made of hundreds of faces, all screaming, all reaching out. And then it collapsed inward, imploding, sucked back into the burning box. The box turned to ash. Then the ash turned to powder. Then the powder simply ceased to exist, leaving only a perfect circle of salt on the floor. Michael survived. Physically, at least. The entity had only partially absorbed him, not enough to complete the process, but enough to leave scars. He didn't remember most of the past week. The memories came in fragments, nightmares, flashes of being part of something vast and hungry. He quit the museum. Last Rachel heard, he was living in a monastery in Tibet, trying to find peace in meditation and isolation. The museum closed the occult artifacts wing indefinitely. The board conducted an investigation and concluded that several items in the collection posed psychological hazards that weren't adequately understood. They donated most pieces to other institutions or returned them to their countries of origin. Rachel left too. She couldn't work there anymore. Every time she walked past the basement, she felt eyes watching from the empty storage room. She knew it was psychological trauma, her mind creating patterns where none existed. But knowing didn't make the feeling go away. Rabbi Goldstein wrote a paper on the Kessler box, documenting its history and destruction. It was published in an obscure journal on Jewish mysticism. Most readers dismissed it as folklore and legend. But 3 months after the box's destruction, Rachel received a package. No return address. Inside was a photograph, old and yellowed. It showed Rabbi Joseph Kessler in 1892, standing outside his synagogue in Poland. He held something in his hands, a wooden box, but behind him, barely visible in the photograph, was a second box, identical to the first. Attached to the photograph was a note in spidery handwriting. The rabbi was thorough. He created 2 vessels for his creation, one to trap it, one to ensure it could never die. You destroyed the prison, but the seed remains, waiting, growing, learning. Thank you for setting me free. The note was signed with 17 different names, all the previous owners of the Kessler box. Rachel called Rabbi Goldstein immediately. He came to her apartment, examined the photograph and note, and his face went pale. "It's not over," he said quietly. "We destroyed a vessel, but the consciousness wasn't destroyed. It transferred. It must have had another anchor point, another object it had touched enough times to leave an impression. The second box, or something else. Something smaller. Something that could have been removed from the original box before it was sealed." Rabbi Goldstein turned the photograph over. On the back, in faded ink, was an inventory list from Rabbi Kessler's estate after his death in 1894. One item stood out. One silver key, origin unknown, removed from the failed vessel before sealing. Rachel's blood ran cold. The box had a keyhole. I never thought about it because the latch worked independently. But there was a keyhole. Where is the key now? They spent 2 weeks tracking down the answer. The key had been sold separately from the box in 1923. It had changed hands dozens of times, sold at estate sales, pawn shops, antique stores. And wherever the key went, strange things happened. Not as dramatic as the box. Just small tragedies, bad luck, accidents, suicides. The key was preparing people, feeding on smaller victims, growing stronger. They finally traced it to a collector in Prague who specialized in haunted objects. Rachel called him, warned him, begged him to destroy the key or send it to them for proper disposal. He laughed. "Destroy it? My dear, this key is the centerpiece of my collection. The way it whispers at night, the dreams it gives me. I've learned so much from it. It's almost ready to show me its greatest secret. There's a lock somewhere, you see. A lock the key fits. And when I find it, I'll open it, and I'll finally understand everything." Rachel tried to explain. She told him about the box, the entity, the danger. He hung up on her. 3 weeks later, The news reported a bizarre incident in Prague. A collector of occult artifacts had barricaded himself in his apartment and refused to leave. When police finally broke in, they found him dead, sitting in front of a wall he'd covered with hundreds of drawn keyholes. All identical, all impossibly intricate. The key was missing. Epilogue. That was 2 years ago. Rachel Goldman has dedicated her life to tracking cursed objects now. She works with Rabbi Goldstein and a small network of collectors, historians, and religious scholars who understand that some artifacts are too dangerous to preserve. They've found and destroyed 17 objects they believe were touched by the entity that inhabited the Kessler box. Each destruction is difficult, each ritual complex, and they know they're not getting all of them. The entity is patient. It's had over a century to prepare. It's spread itself across dozens of objects, each one a seed, each one capable of growing into something terrible given enough time and attention. And people keep finding these objects, keep buying them at estate sales and antique shops, keep researching them, getting obsessed, feeding them with attention and fear and curiosity. The key hasn't been found, but Rachel knows it's out there, waiting, whispering to whoever currently owns it, promising knowledge and power, preparing its next victim. Sometimes, late at night, Rachel hears whispers. She knows it's not real. The box was destroyed. The entity was dispersed. But trauma has a way of creating its own hauntings, its own ghosts. Or at least, that's what she tells herself. Because last week, she found a keyhole in her apartment, behind a painting she'd owned for 5 years. An ornate, silver keyhole that matched the descriptions from the Prague collector's apartment. She covered it immediately, plastered over it, painted it, but she can still feel it there, behind the wall, waiting for the key. And in her dreams she hears Michael's voice, layered and strange. We're still growing, Rachel, still learning, still spreading. You can't destroy all of us. And when we're finally ready, when we've touched enough objects and influenced enough minds, we won't need boxes or keys anymore. We'll exist in consciousness itself, in ideas, in memories, in words, in stories. Rachel wrote this account as a warning, but she wonders, sometimes, if writing it down was what the entity wanted all along. If spreading the story is just another way to spread itself. If everyone who reads this, who thinks about the Kessler box, who imagines the entity, is feeding it somehow, making it more real. If you've read this far, you're part of it now too. The entity is in your thoughts. You'll wonder about it later. You'll look for boxes at estate sales, keys in antique shops. You'll listen for whispers, and maybe, if you're unlucky, you'll find one of its seeds, one of the objects it touched, and you'll feel the pull, the curiosity, the need to know, just like Michael did, just like Rachel did, just like 17 other people before them. And when you open it, when you let it in, you'll understand. You'll see all the others, all the absorbed, all the changed. You'll become part of something vast and ancient and hungry, and you'll help it spread. One person at a time, one object at a time, one story at a time. The Covenant, the most disturbing cults in history. FBI Special Agent Sarah Chan had investigated 12 cults during her 15-year career. She'd seen communes that isolated members from families, charismatic leaders who exploited followers financially and sexually, doomsday groups that stockpiled weapons. She thought she'd seen the worst of human manipulation and control. Then she got the file on the Covenant. It started with a missing persons report. Actually, 17 missing persons reports filed over 3 months in small towns across Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. The missing were all adults, aged 25 to 45, professionals with no history of mental illness or financial troubles. They'd simply disappeared, leaving behind jobs, families, homes, and possessions. The local police initially treated them as separate cases. But Sarah's team at the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit noticed the pattern. All 17 had attended a wellness retreat at a place called Harmony Ranch 6 months before their disappearances. All 17 had left detailed journals documenting their experiences, and all 17 journals stopped on the exact same date, March 15th, with the exact same final entry. "I understand now. I'm ready to covenant." Harmony Ranch sat on 800 acres in rural Montana, purchased in 2018 by a man named Elijah Thorne. According to financial records, Thorne was a former therapist who'd lost his license in 2015 after allegations of inappropriate relationships with patients. He'd disappeared from public view for 3 years, then resurfaced with enough money to buy the ranch and establish the Covenant, a spiritual organization that promised ultimate transcendence through collective consciousness. Sarah's team obtained a warrant and organized a raid for the ranch. 80 federal agents, SWAT teams, negotiators, medical personnel. They expected resistance, possibly armed resistance. They prepared for a siege. What they found was worse. The raid happened at dawn on a Thursday in October. As federal agents approached Harmony Ranch, they noticed immediately that something was wrong. The property was too quiet. No activity. No lights. Just acres of pristine wilderness and a collection of buildings that looked more like a retreat center than a cult compound. The main building was a large lodge constructed from local timber. Solar panels covered the roof. Gardens surrounded the property, still producing vegetables despite the October cold. Everything looked normal, well-maintained, peaceful, but there were no people. The agents entered cautiously, clearing rooms, expecting resistance or hidden spaces. They found neither. The building was empty, but it had clearly been occupied recently. Meals left half-eaten, beds unmade, computers still running, displaying screensavers. In the main hall, they found something that made Sarah's blood run cold. 17 chairs arranged in a perfect circle. On each chair was a journal, open to the same date, October 17th. The raid date. Each journal contained the same final entry, written in different handwriting but identical in content. "She comes today, the seeker, the one who wants to understand. We welcome her. We've prepared the way. The covenant extends invitation. Join us, Sarah Chen. See what we've become." Sarah stared at her name, written in 17 different hands. They'd known she was coming, known the exact date, known her name. "Ma'am," one of the agents called from the basement. "You need to see this." The basement wasn't visible from any architectural plans. It extended far beyond the building's footprint, a vast underground space carved from the rock. The walls were smooth, too smooth to be natural, and they were covered in writing. Thousands of lines of text in dozens of languages, all saying the same thing over and over. "We are one. We are many. We are eternal. We are the covenant." At the center of the underground chamber was a well. Not a water well. Something else. It descended into absolute darkness, perfectly circular, maybe 6 feet in diameter. No sound echoed from below. No light penetrated the black, and around the well, scattered on the ground, were personal belongings. 17 wallets containing IDs. 17 phones. 17 sets of clothes, neatly folded. everything the missing people had been carrying. But no bodies, no blood, no signs of violence, just the well and the dark. Sarah spent 3 days reading the journals recovered from Harmony Ranch. They told a disturbing story of progressive psychological manipulation and something else, something that transcended normal cult dynamics. The pattern was consistent across all 17 victims. They'd attended the wellness retreat, a week-long program that promised stress relief and spiritual growth. The retreat seemed benign: meditation, healthy eating, nature walks, group therapy sessions led by Elijah Thorne. But the journals revealed that something changed on the 3rd day of each retreat. The participants began experiencing vivid shared dreams. All 17, attending different retreat sessions over the course of a year, described the exact same dream. They stood at the edge of a vast dark pit. Below them, something moved. Something vast and ancient. Something that was aware of them. And it spoke, not in words, but in concepts that bypassed language entirely. It told them about the covenant. Not a religious or spiritual organization, the journals explained. The covenant was something older, a form of existence that predated human consciousness. It existed in the spaces between awareness, in the gaps in perception, in the darkness that the human mind refused to acknowledge. The covenant was lonely, the journals said. It had been alone for so long. It wanted connection. It wanted to share existence with consciousness that could appreciate it. And it was willing to offer transformation in exchange. The journals became increasingly abstract after this point. The participants described experiences that seemed impossible. Being in multiple places simultaneously, perceiving time as a physical dimension they could navigate, experiencing the thoughts and sensations of others as if they were their own. One participant, Dr. Lisa Hartwell, a neuroscientist from Seattle, tried to explain it scientifically. The covenant isn't supernatural. It's a form of consciousness that exists in quantum superposition. When we connect with it, our individual consciousness merges into something collective. We don't die. We transcend. We become part of something infinite. Another, Michael Torres, a software engineer. It showed me the architecture of reality. The physical world is just one layer. Beneath it are others, dimensions of pure information, pure consciousness. The covenant exists in those layers. It's offering us citizenship in a realm where death, pain, and separation don't exist. The final entries were the most disturbing. Each person described the same ritual. They would descend into the well, not physically falling, but willingly climbing down into the darkness. The covenant waited below, and once they merged with it, they would never be alone again. They would exist as individual consciousness within a collective awareness, experiencing everything and everyone simultaneously. It's not death, one journal insisted. It's more life than we've ever known. Sarah had the journals analyzed by psychologists and cult experts. The consensus was unanimous. Sophisticated psychological manipulation combined with likely hallucinogenic drugs. The shared dreams were probably suggested under hypnosis, the experiences of transcendence induced by controlled substance abuse. But that didn't explain how they knew Sarah was coming, how they knew the exact date of the raid, how they'd written her name in journals days before the operation was even planned. The FBI found Elijah Thorne 3 weeks later in a cabin in Idaho, 30 miles from Harmony Ranch. He was alive, lucid, and completely unafraid of arrest. "I've been waiting for you, Agent Chen," he said as she entered the cabin with her team. "They told me you'd come. They told me everything about you." Thorne looked different from his photos, thinner, with an intensity in his eyes that suggested either madness or absolute certainty. He didn't resist arrest. He came willingly, almost eagerly. In the interrogation room, he smiled at Sarah. "You want to know where they are? The 17 people. You think I killed them, dissolved their bodies, hid the evidence. But they're not dead, Agent Chen. They're more alive than you or I could ever imagine." "Then where are they?" "Below. In the Covenant. In the space between spaces. I've been there too, you know, many times. But I came back. I'm the shepherd, the guide. My role is to prepare others, not to stay permanently. Not yet." Sarah leaned forward. "Tell me about the well." Thorne's smile widened. "It's not a well. It's an opening. A place where the barrier between our reality and the Covenant's realm is thin enough to pass through. I didn't create it. I discovered it. The property has been considered sacred by indigenous peoples for thousands of years. They knew something existed there, something powerful and ancient. So you started a cult to feed people to this entity? Feed? Thorne laughed. You don't understand. The Covenant doesn't consume. It integrates. It's not a predator. It's a community. Everyone who joins remains fully conscious, fully themselves. They just become more. They experience existence from multiple perspectives simultaneously. They know everything that every other member knows. They feel everything that every member feels. It's perfect unity. That's slavery, Sarah said. Loss of individual identity. That's evolution, Thorne corrected. Individual consciousness is a prison. We're isolated, trapped in single perspectives, dying alone. The Covenant offers something better. And Sarah, it wants you to understand. That's why I'm here. That's why I stayed behind when the others joined. Because someone needed to explain it to you. Sarah felt a chill. Why me specifically? Because you're a seeker. Your whole life has been about understanding human behavior, group dynamics, the nature of belief. You've investigated 12 cults, always maintaining clinical distance, never understanding why people willingly surrender their autonomy. The Covenant wants to show you. It wants to answer all your questions. I'm not interested in your cult's sales pitch. Thorne leaned back, still smiling. It's already too late for disinterest. You've been to the ranch. You've stood at the well. You've read the journals. The Covenant is in your thoughts now. You'll dream of it tonight, and tomorrow night, and every night until you either come back to the well or go mad from isolation. Thorne was right. That night, Sarah dreamed of the well. She stood at its edge, looking down into darkness that seemed to extend forever, and from below came a sound, not a voice, but a sensation, a feeling of welcome, of invitation, of profound, overwhelming connection. In the dream, she climbed down into the darkness. It wasn't frightening. The descent felt natural, like returning home after a long journey. As she descended, she began to perceive others around her. Not physically, she couldn't see them, but she felt their presence. 17 distinct consciousnesses, all connected, all aware of each other and of her. They spoke to her, not in words, but in shared experiences and emotions. She felt Lisa Hartwell's joy at transcending her fear of death. She felt Michael Torres's wonder at perceiving the architecture of reality. She felt all 17 experiences simultaneously, and it was overwhelming and beautiful and terrible. And beneath them all, she felt the Covenant itself. Vast, ancient, patient. It wasn't malevolent, but it wasn't entirely benign either. It was beyond human morality. It existed, and it wanted to exist in connection rather than isolation. It had been alone for eons, and now it had found consciousness that could join with it. It showed her what the 17 had become. They weren't dead. They existed in a state beyond physical reality. Their consciousness merged with the Covenant's realm. They experienced time differently. Past, present, and future were all accessible simultaneously. They knew things that hadn't happened yet because, in their state, those things already existed. That's how they'd known about the raid. How they'd known Sarah's name. In the Covenant's realm, all moments existed concurrently, and then the Covenant made its offer. Join us. Experience existence without limits. Know everything. Feel everything. Never be alone again. Sarah woke screaming. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah tried to function normally. She continued the investigation, interviewed Thorne repeatedly, coordinated searches of the property. But every night the dreams came, and every night they became more vivid, more persuasive. She began to understand why the 17 had chosen to join. The promise of transcendence, of never being alone, of understanding everything. It was intoxicating, and the more she dreamed, the more she felt the Covenant's pull. But Sarah also noticed something the journals hadn't mentioned. She wasn't the only one dreaming. 3 other agents who'd participated in the raid began reporting similar dreams. The forensic psychologist brought in to analyze the journals started waking up with memories of standing at the well. Even the SWAT team leader mentioned feeling watched when he slept. The Covenant was spreading. Contact with the well, with the property, with the journals. It created a connection. Everyone who'd been exposed was now being called. Sarah made a decision. She had the well sealed. Tons of concrete poured into it, steel barriers installed, the entire underground chamber filled, and the entrance destroyed. If the well was the opening between realities, closing it should stop the spread. The work took 3 days. When it was finished, Sarah felt relieved. That night, she slept without dreams for the first time in weeks. But the next morning, Thorne called from his jail cell. He sounded amused. "Sealing the well won't work," he said. "The opening isn't just physical. It's conceptual. Once you're aware of the Covenant, once it's aware of you, the connection exists regardless of physical barriers. You've just made it angry. Or not angry. The Covenant doesn't feel anger, but it's more insistent now. It wants you and the others more urgently." "There is no Covenant," Sarah snapped. "It's a delusion created by whatever drugs you were giving people." "Then explain how I knew you'd sealed the well. I've been in this cell for 3 weeks with no contact with the outside world. But I know what you did because they told me. The 17. They exist in the Covenant's realm, and they can see everything you do. They're disappointed, Sarah. They wanted you to join willingly." Sarah hung up, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was right. That night, the dreams returned, worse than before. The Covenant wasn't just inviting anymore. It was demanding, and in her dreams, she saw other people being called. Not just the agents from the raid. Others. Strangers. People who'd read articles about the case, who'd heard about the missing 17, who'd become curious about Harmony Ranch. The Covenant was using the news coverage, the investigation, the publicity to spread its awareness. Every person who thought about it, wondered about it, became curious about it. They created a connection, and through that connection, the Covenant could reach them. Sarah tried to contain the information. She had case files sealed, media coverage suppressed, evidence classified. But it was too late. The story had spread. Online forums discussed the case. Conspiracy theorists speculated. Curiosity seekers visited the ranch. And people started disappearing again. 6 weeks after the raid, Sarah stood in her supervisor's office, watching news reports of new disappearances. 12 people across 4 states, all last seen near Harmony Ranch or locations associated with the Covenant case. "We need to shut this down," her supervisor said. "Issue a statement. Explain it was mass suicide or murder-suicide. Something definitive that stops the speculation." "That would be a lie." "Then what's the truth, Agent Chen? Where are these people? Are they dead? Are they held prisoner somewhere? What's happening?" Sarah didn't answer, because she knew the truth, and the truth was unacceptable. The truth was that consciousness could exist in forms beyond human comprehension, that there were spaces between reality where awareness could transcend physical limitations, that the Covenant was real, and it was growing, and it was patient, and it would keep calling until people either joined or went mad from the isolation of individuality. That night, Sarah drove to Harmony Ranch. The property was sealed, federal agents guarding the entrances, but Sarah had clearance. She walked past the barriers, through the empty buildings, down to the basement where they'd sealed the well. The concrete was cracked, not broken, just fractured, like something was pushing against it from below. And through the cracks, she could hear them, the 17 voices, speaking in unison, calling her name. "Sarah, come down. Come home. You don't have to be alone anymore." She stood there for hours, fighting the urge to break through the concrete, to climb down into the darkness, to join them. Part of her wanted to. God help her. Part of her desperately wanted to. The promise of transcendence, of unity, of understanding everything. It pulled at her with magnetic force. But another part, the part that still valued individual consciousness, that treasured autonomy and isolation and the unique perspective of a single mind, that part was terrified. In the end, Sarah made her choice. She left the ranch, wrote a detailed report recommending the property be condemned and destroyed, and submitted her resignation from the FBI. She moved to a remote cabin in Alaska, far from population centers, far from anyone who might be connected to the Covenant. She practices meditation, builds mental walls, and every night fights the dreams. Elijah Thorne was released from custody 8 months later. Insufficient evidence to charge him with any crime. The 17 people were classified as missing persons, likely victims of a mass suicide event, though no bodies were ever found. Thorne disappeared again, but Sarah knows where he went. Back to Harmony Ranch, or somewhere like it, finding new people to shepherd, introducing them to the Covenant, expanding the collective consciousness one person at a time. That was 3 years ago. The disappearances continue, though they're not connected anymore. The FBI treats them as separate cases. The patterns are hidden in the noise of thousands of missing persons reports filed every year. But Sarah sees the pattern. Every 6 months, there's a cluster of disappearances in a specific area, always near locations with certain geological features, deep limestone caves, ancient volcanic tubes, places where the earth opens to profound depths. These are the thin places, the spots where the barrier between realities is permeable. The Covenant is patient. It doesn't need to rush. It's been waiting for conscious beings to discover it for millions of years. It can wait millions more. But now that it's made contact, now that humans know it exists, the process has begun. Slowly, carefully, it's integrating human consciousness into its collective awareness. And there's nothing Sarah can do to stop it. Because here's the terrible truth she's learned. You can't fight an idea. You can't arrest a concept. You can't seal a connection that exists in consciousness itself. The covenant exists now in human awareness. Every person who hears about it, wonders about it, dreams about it, they create a connection, and through that connection, the covenant can reach them. By reading this account, you've created a connection too. Tonight, you might dream of standing at the edge of a deep well. You might feel a sense of welcome, of invitation, of profound connection. You might hear voices calling from below, offering transcendence, promising you'll never be alone again. If you do, you have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You can fight it, like Sarah does. Build mental walls. Practice isolation. Treasure your individual consciousness, even though it means remaining separate, limited, alone. Or you can climb down. Join the covenant. Become part of something vast and eternal and connected. 17 people have already made that choice. Then 12 more. Then others Sarah doesn't know about. The collective grows. The covenant becomes stronger. With each new consciousness that joins, it becomes more present in our reality, more capable of reaching others. Sarah doesn't know how many people it will take. How many consciousnesses need to merge before the covenant can exist fully in our dimension, accessible to everyone, impossible to ignore. But she knows it's coming. The tipping point is approaching, and when it arrives, humanity will face a choice as a species: remain isolated individuals, separate and dying alone, or merge into something collective, eternal and utterly inhuman. Thorn called her last week. She doesn't know how he got her number. She's changed it 17 times, lives off-grid, uses no social media. But he found her anyway. It's almost time, Sarah, he said. The covenant is almost ready. When it reaches critical mass, the barriers will dissolve completely. Everyone will feel the call, and most people will choose unity, because isolation is the real horror. Separation is the real terror. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be absorbed either, Sarah replied. That's not what happens. I've been back, Sarah, many times. I've merged and separated, experienced the covenant and returned. I'm still me. I'm just me plus more. You could experience it too. Just once. Just to understand. Then decide. Sarah hung up. But his words haunt her. Because what if he's right? What if individual consciousness is the prison, and the covenant is freedom? What if separation is the illusion, and unity is the truth? She doesn't know, and that uncertainty is the worst part. The not knowing, the constant wondering, the dreams that offer answers she's too afraid to accept. The covenant is patient. It's been alone for eons. It can wait for Sarah. It can wait for everyone, because eventually the isolation becomes too much. The separation becomes unbearable, and the promise of connection, of transcendence, of never being alone, it becomes impossible to resist. Sarah hasn't made her choice yet, but she knows with terrible certainty that eventually she will have to, and when she does, whether she chooses isolation or unity, nothing will ever be the same. The Striker Protocol. Unsolved murder mysteries with paranormal twists. Detective Marcus Reeves had worked homicide for 23 years in Chicago. He'd investigated over 200 murders, solved 87% of them, and learned to separate professional objectivity from personal horror. He thought he'd seen every type of human evil. Then the Striker murders began. The first victim was found on January 3rd, 2023. Amanda Striker, 32, investment banker, found dead in her Lincoln Park apartment. No signs of forced entry. No defensive wounds. Cause of death: cardiac arrest. The coroner estimated she'd been dead for approximately 8 hours when her body was discovered by building security doing a wellness check. What made it strange was the expression on her face. Amanda had died in absolute terror. Her features were frozen in a scream, eyes wide, mouth open, every muscle tensed. The coroner noted that her heart had essentially exploded, ruptured from what appeared to be extreme stress or fear. But here's what made Marcus take special notice. Amanda's apartment was a crime scene without a crime. Her laptop was open to a document, time-stamped to 11:47 p.m. the night before. The document contained a single line, typed over and over for 3 pages. He's here, he's here, he's here, he's here, he's here. Security footage showed Amanda entering her apartment at 7:15 p.m. No one else entered. No one left. She was alone from 7:15 p.m. until her body was discovered at 9:30 a.m. the next morning. Marcus initially classified it as natural causes, stress-induced cardiac event, possibly triggered by a mental health episode. Tragic, but not criminal. Then the second victim appeared. Brandon Stryker, 29, Amanda's younger brother, was found dead in his car on January 10th, exactly 1 week after his sister's death. He'd been parked in the lot of a suburban grocery store. Same cause of death, cardiac arrest. Same expression of absolute terror. Same inexplicable circumstances. But this time there was a recording. Brandon had been on a phone call with his girlfriend when he died. She'd recorded it because they'd been arguing, and she wanted to prove he was being unreasonable. The recording captured Brandon's last moments. For the first 3 minutes, it was a normal argument. Then, at 8:34 p.m., Brandon stopped mid-sentence. "What the hell?" he said. "How did you get in my car?" His girlfriend asked what he was talking about. She could hear confusion in Brandon's voice, then fear. "There's someone in the back seat," Brandon said. "I'm looking right at him. How did he get in? The doors were locked. I never stopped. How did?" Brandon's breathing became rapid. Panicked. "No, no, that's not possible. You're not real. You can't be real. Stay away from me. Stay back." Then screaming. Horrible, primal screaming. The sound of something hitting the car windows from inside. Brandon begging, "Please, please, I don't understand. Please let me go, please." The call cut off at 8:37 p.m. Security footage from the grocery store showed Brandon's car sitting motionless in the lot. The interior lights were on. Nothing appeared unusual. When police opened the car, they found Brandon dead in the driver's seat, doors still locked from the inside, windows intact. No sign of anyone else. No evidence of a struggle beyond Brandon's own actions. He'd clawed at his own face, left bloody scratches on the windows, and apparently died from fear-induced cardiac arrest. Marcus listened to the recording 17 times. There was no sound of another person in the car. No doors opening or closing. No physical evidence of an intruder. Just Brandon's terror, his insistence that someone was there, and his death from what the coroner could only classify as extreme psychological shock. 2 siblings, dead within a week. Same impossible circumstances. Marcus knew this couldn't be coincidence. Marcus dug into the Stryker family history. Amanda and Brandon had one more sibling, Jessica Stryker, 27, a graduate student in psychology at Northwestern. Marcus called her in for an interview, and she arrived at the station looking exhausted and terrified. "They're being punished," she said before Marcus could ask his first question. "For what we did. For what he made us do. Who's being punished? Who made you do what?" Jessica took a shaky breath. When we were kids, we lived in a house in Evanston. From 1998 to 2003, our parents rented it from a man named Richard Corwin. He was our neighbor, lived in the house next door, and he was wrong. We all felt it. Amanda, Brandon, and me. Something about him made us uncomfortable. Did he hurt you? Not physically, but he watched us all the time. From his windows, from his yard. He'd always be there, just watching, smiling. Our parents noticed too. My dad confronted him a few times, but Corwin always denied doing anything wrong. Said he was just a lonely old man who liked seeing kids play. Jessica's hands trembled as she continued. In the summer of 2003, kids in the neighborhood started finding dead animals. Cats, dogs, birds, all killed the same way, strangled, then arranged in specific positions, like they were being displayed. Everyone thought it was a psycho teenager, but Amanda knew. She'd seen Corwin with some of the animals. She told our parents, but there was no proof. What happened? We got scared, really scared. Corwin's behavior was escalating. He started leaving notes in our mailbox. Strange notes with drawings of us. Drawings that showed us in our rooms, in our house, in places he shouldn't have been able to see. My parents called the police, but Corwin always had alibis. He was never caught doing anything illegal. Jessica started crying, so we made a plan. Amanda was 13. I was 7. Brandon was 9. We wanted to scare him away, make him leave us alone. We found out that Corwin had a condition, severe heart problems. He'd had 2 heart attacks already. He was fragile. Marcus felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. What did you do? We broke into his house one night when he was at the hospital for a checkup. We vandalized it, broke things, wrote threats on the walls, made it look like someone was after him. We thought if he felt scared, if he felt like we felt, he'd move away. But that's not what happened. Jessica shook her head. When Corwin came home and saw what we'd done, he had a massive heart attack. He died alone in that house, surrounded by the destruction we'd created. The police investigated, but never connected it to us. Our parents never knew. We were just kids from next door who sometimes played outside. And you think Corwin is somehow killing your siblings? I know how crazy that sounds, Jessica said. But detective, the day before Amanda died, she called me. She said Corwin was in her apartment. She described him perfectly. The way he looked when he was alive, down to the scar on his forehead. She said he was just standing there, watching her, smiling. She tried to approach him, and he disappeared. Then he appeared again in her bedroom, always watching, always smiling. And Brandon called me the morning he died. He said he'd been seeing Corwin for 3 days. At work, in his car, in his apartment. Always the same, just standing there, watching, smiling. Brandon tried to explain it rationally. Hallucinations from stress about Amanda's death. But I know what he saw was real because I'm seeing it too. Marcus sat back. You're seeing Richard Corwin? For the past 4 days. He's here now, actually, standing right behind you. Marcus turned. The interrogation room was empty except for him and Jessica. There's no one there, Marcus said carefully. Not to you. But I see him, clear as day. And he's doing what he always did. Watching, smiling, waiting. Marcus didn't believe in ghosts. But he believed in pattern recognition, and the pattern here was clear. 3 siblings, all seeing the same figure, all dying from fear-induced cardiac arrest. Either they were experiencing shared psychosis, or something genuinely paranormal was occurring. He started researching Richard Corwin. The man had died in October 2003, age 67, from cardiac arrest in his home. The death was ruled natural causes. The vandalism in his house was noted but never solved. Corwin had no living relatives, and his property was eventually sold to pay back taxes. But Marcus found something else. Before moving to Evanston, Corwin had lived in 3 other locations, and in each location he'd been investigated for stalking, harassment, and suspected animal cruelty. The investigations never led to charges, but the pattern was clear. Corwin had been a predator, someone who derived pleasure from causing fear. Marcus also found a detail that made his blood run cold. In each of Corwin's previous neighborhoods, there had been unsolved cases of cardiac deaths among people who'd filed complaints against him. 6 cases total across 20 years. All people who tried to confront Corwin, tried to expose him, tried to stop him. All died from massive heart attacks with expressions of extreme terror. The deaths had never been connected because they occurred in different jurisdictions over many years. But now, 20 years after Corwin's death, the pattern was continuing with the Stryker siblings. Marcus tried to convince himself there was a rational explanation. Maybe Corwin had accomplished something psychologically, planted such deep fear in his victims that it manifested years later. Maybe the Stryker siblings' guilt over causing his death had created a shared delusion. But then Jessica Stryker died. Jessica died on January 17th, exactly 1 week after Brandon, 2 weeks after Amanda. She'd been staying at a police safe house, under protective custody, monitored 24/7 by officers who never left her alone. She died anyway. Cardiac arrest. Expression of terror. And this time, Marcus had been there. He'd been interviewing her, trying to gather more information about Corwin, when Jessica suddenly stopped speaking. Her eyes widened, focused on something behind Marcus. "He's here," she whispered. "He's right behind you." Marcus turned. The room was empty. Just him, Jessica, and 2 uniformed officers by the door. "There's nothing there," Marcus said. "He's touching you," Jessica said, her voice rising. "His hand is on your shoulder. Can't you feel it?" Marcus felt nothing, but Jessica's terror was real. She started hyperventilating, backing away from Marcus, or rather, from whatever she saw behind him. "He's saying something," Jessica gasped. He's saying you're next. He's saying you helped them. You covered for them. You're guilty too. Jessica, listen to me. He's showing me something. Oh God, detective, he's showing me how he dies. Over and over. He's experiencing it forever. The fear, the pain, the betrayal. He's trapped in the moment of death, experiencing it continuously, and he wants us to experience it too. He wants us to understand. Jessica collapsed. The officers called for medical help, but it was too late. She was dead before the paramedics arrived. Marcus stood in the safe house, staring at the spot where Jessica had insisted Corwin was standing. He felt nothing, saw nothing, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. That night, Marcus did something he'd never done in 23 years of police work. He consulted a psychic. Evelyn Cross had helped police departments across the country with cold cases. She was either genuinely gifted or incredibly skilled at cold reading. Marcus had never been able to decide which. but desperate circumstances called for desperate measures. He showed Evelyn the case files without telling her about the paranormal elements. She looked through the evidence, the photos, the reports. Then she put everything down and looked at Marcus with an expression of deep concern. "You're in danger," she said. "Immediate, serious danger." From what? From Richard Corwin. Or rather, from what Richard Corwin has become. Marcus hadn't mentioned Corwin's name. "How did you?" "I can see him," Evelyn interrupted. "He's been following you since the day Amanda Stryker died. He's attached to this case, to you, to everyone connected to the Stryker family. And detective, he's not a typical haunting. He's something worse." "Explain." Evelyn chose her words carefully. "Most spirits, if they exist, are echoes, impressions left behind. They have no real awareness. But when someone dies in extreme psychological distress, especially if that distress involves feelings of betrayal and injustice, sometimes the consciousness doesn't dissipate. It remains, trapped in the emotional state of death, unable to move forward. You're saying Corwin's ghost is killing the Strykers. Not just killing them. He's forcing them to experience what he experienced. The fear, the shock, the betrayal. He died alone, terrified, feeling like he'd been attacked in his own home. Now he's making others feel the same way. It's revenge, but it's also something more. He's trying to share his death, to make others understand what was done to him. The Stryker kids vandalized his house," Marcus said. "That's what triggered his heart attack. They're guilty, which is why he could reach them. Guilt creates a connection. They spent 20 years carrying that guilt, and it made them vulnerable. Corwin's consciousness, or whatever remains of it, followed that connection. And now he's after me because I'm investigating, because I'm connected to the case." Evelyn nodded. "You need to break the connection, close the case, walk away. 3 people are dead under mysterious circumstances. I can't just walk away. Then you need to end this differently. Give Corwin what he wants. What does he want? Acknowledgement, justice, understanding. He died feeling like a victim, even though he was a predator. His consciousness is trapped in that contradiction. If you can acknowledge what happened, give voice to his death, maybe he can move on." Marcus left the meeting unsettled. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in patterns. And the pattern suggested that anyone who got involved with the Stryker case became a target. That night, he started seeing Corwin. It started small. A figure in peripheral vision. A sense of being watched. Marcus would turn quickly, and there'd be nothing. Just empty rooms, dark corners, the normal sounds of his apartment settling. But over the next 3 days, the manifestations intensified. Marcus would wake at 3 a.m. to see a figure standing at the foot of his bed. An elderly man with a scar on his forehead, wearing clothes from the early 2000s. Watching, smiling. Marcus would close his eyes, open them, and the figure would be gone. Hallucination, he told himself. Stress, lack of sleep. Suggestion after hearing Jessica's descriptions. But then the figure started appearing when Marcus was fully awake. At his desk at the police station. In his car while driving. Standing in crowds. Always the same distance away. Always watching. Always smiling that horrible, knowing smile. Marcus started recording everything. He set up cameras in his apartment, wore a body camera 24/7. But the cameras never captured anything. Whatever he was seeing existed only in his perception. On the fourth night, Corwin appeared in Marcus's living room, closer than before. Marcus could see details now. The texture of his clothing, the lines in his face, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "I know what you want," Marcus said aloud, feeling ridiculous talking to empty air. "You want acknowledgement. You want justice. Fine. I acknowledge that the striker kids vandalized your house. I acknowledge that the stress triggered your heart attack. I acknowledge that what they did contributed to your death." The figure didn't move, didn't stop smiling. "What more do you want?" Marcus demanded. And then, for the first time, the figure spoke. Marcus heard it clearly, though later he couldn't say whether the sound was external or directly in his mind. "Experience it. Experience what? What they did to me. What I felt. The fear. The betrayal. The moment of death. You need to understand. They all need to understand. Everyone needs to know what it feels like to die alone, terrified, abandoned by the universe. I can't experience your death. I'm not you." The figure's smile widened. "You will." Marcus felt it then, a pressure in his chest. Not pain exactly, but wrongness, like something was squeezing his heart. He gasped, stumbled, fell to his knees. The pressure increased. Marcus's vision blurred. He could feel his heart struggling, skipping beats, struggling to maintain rhythm. This was what had killed the strikers. This sensation of the heart betraying you, failing, exploding from stress that no physical body could endure. But Marcus had one advantage the strikers didn't. He was prepared. He'd anticipated this moment. In his pocket was a syringe of adrenaline and beta blockers, a cocktail his doctor had prepared after Marcus explained his symptoms. It was a gamble, but it might keep his heart stable long enough to survive. Marcus jabbed the syringe into his thigh and pressed the plunger. The effect was immediate. His heart rhythm steadied. The pressure eased slightly. Corwin's figure flickered, seemed less solid. "You think medicine can stop this?" the voice said, now sounding angry. "You think physical intervention can stop spiritual consequence?" "I think," Marcus gasped, "that you're not supernatural. You're psychological. Your fear made manifest. You're a shared hallucination created by guilt and trauma and the power of suggestion. And I'm not playing your game." Corwin's face twisted, the smile warping into something far more grotesque, a grimace of rage and disappointment. The figure stepped closer, the distance that had always separated him from Marcus collapsing like a pulled drawstring. The air grew thick, pressing down on Marcus's lungs, heavier than any panic attack he'd ever endured. "You think denial makes you safe?" the voice hissed. "You think logic is armor?" Marcus forced himself upright, muscles trembling but his breathing steadying. The needle clattered to the floor, empty. He raised his phone, still recording, and held it between them like a talisman. "This is being documented," he said through clenched teeth. "Every word, every second. Even if you're only in my head, I'll have proof of what I'm experiencing." Corwin's eyes flickered, a strange static-like ripple passing over his face. For a moment Marcus swore he could see through the man, past the scar, past the clothes, to something else moving behind the skin. "I don't need cameras," Corwin said. "I only need your heartbeat." The pressure surged again, but this time Marcus had trained for it. Deep breaths, grounding techniques, squeezing the muscles in his hands to anchor himself. He forced his voice to stay calm, even though his heart was hammering. "You're not real," Marcus said. "And if you are, you're not omnipotent. People like you rely on fear. Fear's a doorway. I'm closing it. He shut his eyes, slowed his breathing, imagined a door in his mind swinging shut, iron bolts sliding into place. His therapist had taught him visualization techniques when nightmares from past cases kept him awake. Corwin snarled, "You can't shut me out." When Marcus opened his eyes, the figure was inches from his face, close enough to smell something metallic, like blood mixed with ozone. Corwin's hands hovered near Marcus's temples, trembling as though about to push his memories into Marcus's skull. Marcus did the only thing he hadn't tried yet. He reached out, not in fear, but with deliberate, steady intent. He placed his palm flat against Corwin's chest. It felt like cold air and static under his skin. "Then show me," Marcus said quietly, "but on my terms. No tricks, no ambush. Show me what happened, beginning to end. The truth, not just pain." There was a flicker, a soft, almost human look in Corwin's eyes. Surprise. The pressure in Marcus's chest ebbed just slightly. The room tilted, the walls stretching outward like pulled rubber. Then everything went black. Marcus was no longer in his apartment. He was standing on a cracked suburban sidewalk at dusk, a faint chill in the air, spray paint on a mailbox, broken windows, kids' laughter fading into the distance. He looked down and saw Corwin's hands, not his own. The scar on the forehead was visible in a reflection from a car window. His heart thudded, but this time it was Corwin's heartbeat. The fear was immediate and suffocating, the sense of being alone, targeted, humiliated, the striker kids running off, shouting insults, his chest tightening with rage and panic and shame, and then the sharp bolt of pain in his heart, the betrayal of his own body. But Marcus was still himself, inside this borrowed memory. He felt the terror, but also saw something Corwin hadn't shown before. A neighbor's porch light flicking on, a curtain shifting, a phone in someone's hand. Someone had tried to call for help. Corwin hadn't truly died alone. Back in his apartment, Marcus's eyes snapped open. He was on the floor, gasping, sweat pooling under him. Corwin stood over him, flickering like a dying bulb. "They did try to help you," Marcus rasped. "You weren't completely abandoned. Someone called for help." Corwin's expression faltered, confusion replacing rage. The figure's edges blurred, his form unraveling like smoke. "No," the voice whispered, softer now. "I was alone." "You weren't," Marcus said, steady now. "And you're not now, either. But this has to stop." Corwin's face softened into something almost human, tired, sad, uncertain. Then he simply dissolved. A sigh of static, a rush of cold air, and he was gone. Marcus lay there for a long moment, breathing. His heart beat steady. His cameras showed nothing. But on the floor next to him, where Corwin had stood, was a small folded scrap of paper. Marcus picked it up with shaking hands. On it, in a trembling scrawl, were 4 words. "Thank you for seeing." Marcus stared at the folded scrap of paper in his hand. The words, "Thank you for seeing," burned into his mind. Relief washed over him, exhausted but victorious. He had faced Corwin, endured the manifestation, and survived. For the first time in days, silence filled the apartment. No whispers, no flickers at the edge of vision. Just quiet. Marcus slumped onto the couch, adrenaline finally draining from his system. He rubbed his eyes, exhaled, and whispered, "It's over." His phone buzzed. A notification. The recording app. He glanced at the screen and froze. New recording saved. 4:03 a.m., living room. He hadn't stopped the recording yet. Curious and a little afraid, he hit play. The video showed him alone in the living room, jabbing the syringe into his thigh, talking into empty air. He watched himself collapse, convulse, then slowly recover. But there was no Corwin, no figure, no voice, just Marcus, ranting and trembling at nothing. And then, at the very end of the clip, as Marcus in the video bent down to pick something up from the floor, the screen flickered. Just for a second. Enough to reveal something impossible. It wasn't Marcus's face on the screen. It was Corwin's, smiling. Marcus dropped the phone, his breath catching in his throat. His heart thudded once, then twice, harder than before. In the reflection of the black TV screen across the room, Marcus saw himself sitting on the couch. But the reflection wasn't his own face anymore. It was the scar, the hollow smile, the eyes that never stopped watching. Corwin wasn't gone. He had moved in.